Ahead on American Sunrise Early Edition, you've got mail. Elon Musk and Doge tell federal workers to send them an email describing what they did on the job last week. Apparently, to some Democrats, this demand is tantamount to a human rights violation. President Trump thanks him for his service, but still fires Joint Chiefs Chairman C.Q. Brown. It's something presidents have done in the past, but apparently to some Democrats, this demand is tantamount to a human rights violation. Anytime, any place, the Israeli Air Force buzzes low over the massive memorial service in Beirut for Hezbollah terrorist monster Hassan Nasrallah. The Israelis were sending a message that was loud and clear. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's willing to step down in return for more Western support versus Russia or even NATO membership. But it's really that much about him, or is it? And concerns for Pope Francis are growing as slight kidney failure is just the latest ailment to plague him along with his severe respiratory issues. American Sunrise Early Edition starts now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition, the show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds, that's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. I know it's a Monday, but we're going to get you off and running, and hopefully we'll put some knowledge in your head and a smile on your face. That's all I can offer you at this time because of very severe FCC regulations about me paying you to watch this show. All right, welcome. To join with us right now is Colonel Rob Maness from The Rob Maness Show and a former Air Force Intelligence Wing Commander. And Colonel, you and I have talked before on both this program and on your program about the need to clean house at the Pentagon. I know General C.Q. Brown is not the only leader in question that we need to see some changes from, but how do you like this decision, and do you think this is the beginning of something, or is it off track?
I think it's the exact right decision that needs to be made. And let me just make a correction real quick. I was a vice commander of the Airborne Intelligence Wing and then a wing commander later on in my career. But thank you very much for that. C.Q. Brown is the leader of the Marxist woke movement in the United States military. When the George Floyd incident occurred, he lost his mind. I know him personally. I have a lot of former colleagues that know him personally, think of him very highly as a warrior, as an aviator, as a commander. But when the George Floyd incident happened, he lost his ever-loving mind and tied himself to the Marxist ideology that came out of the Black Lives Movement during that period of time. And then he implemented policies in the United States Air Force and now in all of the armed services as chairman of the Joint Chiefs to establish that ideology as the precedent way of thinking in everything. His most famous act was signing a memo along with former Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall, who has a whole other bad actor history on his own, that said that there were too many white pilots in the United States Air Force and laid out goals for race and gender to meet in order for them to not be too many white pilots in the United States Air Force. And as you know, with all the discussion of aircraft crashes that we've had the last few weeks, especially, those types of jobs are the jobs that you must hire on a merit basis. The best, most highly qualified individuals are the ones you want flying your combat aircraft and leading your combat forces in battle on behalf of the American people so that we can win and not be fighting in wars all the time. So he took the exact opposite approach in everything he did and really laid out and built up a sound infrastructure to put this Marxism in place, and it's being torn down as we speak, and it was only a matter of time for him to go, and he needed to go, and so did the other generals that were fired Friday night. I think there were 5 or 6. Jim Slife, the Assistant Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, is known by his troops as the most woke DEI ideology Marxist inside the United States Air Force itself now. And I think he was probably in line to be the chief of staff of the Air Force, and he's gone. I know him personally. I know other folks, former colleagues that flew with him, and that they are all applauding that move. The 3 JAGs that were fired, the JAGs are the top legal advisors to the commanders and the chiefs of staff and the chairman, and they gave terrible advice during the COVID vaccine mandate. As a matter of fact, they advised the commanders to break the law and violate the rights of those that were objecting to having to take that vaccine, which was well within their rights according to the law. And getting back to Frank Kendall, he actually said in a closed-door meeting to all his Air Force generals, there will be no religious exemptions. There will be no religious exemptions, which is a violation of the law itself. And we have eyewitness testimony in court cases, depositions that prove that.
There are so many great points that you brought up. First of all, thank you so much for correcting me. This is so amazing. One of the things I love about the military and honorable officers, retired or still active duty, is that the whole stolen valor issue. Any other industry, I could have said you were the CEO of something like that. It wouldn't have been a big deal. But I like the fact that there's great honor in what actual merit and what actual ranks you had. So thank you for correcting me on that. The other thing is, just for anyone who's watching, who's misunderstanding what I'm talking about and what the colonel are talking about, the scandal isn't that there aren't enough black or other minority pilots in the Air Force, for one example. The scandal is that our education system and our cultural system doesn't prepare them and give them the skills enough to be pilots in the Air Force. Hiring them at the end of the chain and not fixing this broken pipeline, where that not enough of these kids, starting from birth, have enough of an educational opportunity. That's what needs to be fixed. And it would be great if an Air Force commander or a Joint Chiefs general said that exactly. It's not our job in the military to take on people who may not be qualified. It's our job in the military to say, hey, America, please fix this problem, because we want to have more qualified people of any color. Why that's so hard for them to say is beyond me. But that's really sad. All right, let's move on to Ukraine for a second. Now, Colonel, Ukrainian President Zelensky says he's willing to give up the presidency in return for NATO membership. That's nice, but I'm willing to give up my 8th grade honor camper trophy for a new Maserati. Honestly, big deal. Neither of those things are going to happen, are they, Colonel?
No, they're not going to happen. J.D. Vance in his speech in Munich already said that. Pete Hegseth in his speech at the NATO summit in Belgium already said that. The President of the United States, they are speaking for his policy positions. And it's just not going to happen. As a matter of fact, the NATO issue is the reason why there are Russian troops actively fighting in Ukraine right now. And when Donald Trump was accused of trying to say that Ukraine started the war, that's exactly what he was talking about. And it's not all on Ukraine's shoulders. A lot of that is on the United States leadership's shoulders, going back over a decade in mucking around in this part of the world that led to the Russians making the decision to take this next step in this war in February of 2022, which was not the first step. This war started a long time ago, really between the people in the Donbass region that are Russian ethnics and the rest of the Ukrainians that were trying to kill them all and ethnic cleanse them out of that area. So, him deciding he wants to step down, if only you'll give us NATO membership, that is the red line in the sand for everybody, but especially the Russians. He knows they're never going to buy that. And he's putting a position out there that's going to stop the peace talks. I used to give Zelensky the benefit of the doubt and think that it was the NATO leadership, like the Boris Johnson, former UK prime minister, that stopped the peace deal out of Istanbul way back 3 years ago. But I've got a feeling it was more Zelensky than anybody else. And I'm wondering why he wants more hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of young Ukrainians to die. I mean, their average age of their conscripts right now is about 43 years old. They don't have the personnel base to get this done. NATO and the United States are not going to put troops in there to go fight Russia over the border situation between Ukraine and Russia. It's time to come to the table, put things like this that are not doable aside, and come to a real peace agreement so you can save what's left of your country.
Yeah, meat grinder is the word that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
Colonel, this was a pretty extraordinary scene in Beirut over the weekend as Israeli F-35s buzzed the Hassan Nasrallah Memorial Service hate fest in Beirut. I'd love to hear your response to this as an Air Force veteran.
Anytime, anywhere, they proved that, but the other part of the scene on the ground with the tens of thousands of people supporting Nasrallah and his part of this Nazism that has come out of Iran is eye-opening, and we should all be paying attention to that. So there were two different messages going on there, one from each side, and both of them were very strong. The Israeli Air Force, anytime, anywhere, we rule the skies, and we can come after you whenever we need to. But the Hezbollah folks are showing that they have tens of thousands of fighters left, and they're willing to kill every single one of those fighters, kill their families, and kill every civilian that they can in order to try to achieve victory. We know that they can't do that because of the vast capability of the IDF and her allies, but that fight is still going.
Yeah, a lot of discussion in Israel about whether they should have actually bombed that event, but that's their debate. Hey, Colonel, getting back to the Doge situation, the latest development is that Elon Musk and Doge want federal workers to send Doge an email explaining what they did at work last week. Now, I'm having a little fun with this, and this morning I'm imagining a worker at the Fish and Wildlife Agency telling Doge that they spent all last week trying to determine what gender Bigfoot is and which pronouns to use. But in all seriousness, the crying over this demand must seem laughable to someone like you, who dealt with drill sergeants and COs in your Air Force career, who asked you not only to do stuff like this, but a lot worse. I mean, could the federal workers be softer? I mean, aren't they a little embarrassed about how complainy and whiny they sound?
I don't know if they're embarrassed or not, but they should be, Jake. This is unbelievable. Look, my last job in the Air Force, I was a wing commander. I had 4 full colonels working for me that had thousands of people working for them. And I asked them every week, hey, send me 3 or 4 bullets that tells me what you guys did this week, because, my span of control was pretty wide. I had a 53,000 acre base with over 23,000 people working and living on it. So I needed to have my subordinates telling me what was going on in their part of the mission so that I could have a big picture on it. And that's all this is. I was thinking about mine this morning. I need to send to Elon, and one of them is I'm trying to assess and take a survey of all the Democrat and liberal and woke meltdowns from Dan Bongino being named as the deputy director of the FBI within just days of Kash Patel being sworn in as the director of the FBI. That's probably number one on my list, is how do I get that survey finished? And I'm doing the research on that.
Yeah, I love that. Well, anyway, but here's a hot tip, everyone. Do not misgender Bigfoot. It's he, him, and you don't want to make that mistake. All right, Colonel Rob Maness, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great week. And just again, thank you. Great insight as usual.
Thanks, Jake. Happy Monday, everybody.
Thank you. All right, coming up, there's an update in the Luigi Mangione CEO murder case. We'll talk about it with a former federal prosecutor. And there's no joy in NBC, and MSNBC. No Joy Reid, that is. But is this just shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic? American Sunrise Early Edition. We'll be right back. Live from Chicago, Illinois. Check that scene out. That looks really nice, actually. Chicago can be brutal this time of year. It is a great town. By the way, great restaurant town. If you're a restaurant person, go to Chicago. You'll get a lot more restaurants in the shorter amount of distance than New York or LA. All right. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. I'm also checking out the chat in Getter and Rumble. Please watch us there. I'd love to hear on Getter and Rumble what you guys think about the gendering of Bigfoot. That's very important. All right, President Trump hit on a lot of topics during his CPAC speech this weekend, but he didn't avoid addressing the federal worker layoffs. Check it out.
We're removing all of the unnecessary, incompetent, and corrupt bureaucrats from the federal workforce. That's what we're doing. And under the buyouts, we offered federal employees more than 75,000 federal bureaucrats. Think of that. Have voluntarily agreed to surrender their taxpayer-funded jobs. We want to make government smaller, more efficient. We want to keep the best people, and we're not going to keep the worst people. And, you know, we're doing another thing. If they don't report for work, we're firing them. In other words, you have to go to office.
Of course, Real America's Voice was at CPAC Live, and you can still find a lot of the highlights on our Getter and Rumble feeds and the RAV website. And thanks to some of the great guys in the control room who went to CPAC, and thanks to the people who filled in for them on this show. You guys all did a great job. I know it wasn't easy. Well, we learned yesterday that MSNBC has canceled Anchor Joy Reid's primetime show. That show had been on the air since 2020, and she had another daytime show on the channel starting in 2014. She's been there 11 years. She was well known for her extreme hatred of Trump supporters in Israel, but this really isn't about her. It's just about downsizing. I've been in this business for over 30 years, and you can't really think that MSNBC and CNN really have ratings as their number one priority. As I've tried to explain to a number of people for a long time, those television stations are owned by much larger corporations that have much more profitable and vulnerable entities within those corporations. In the case of MSNBC, you're talking about Comcast. And Comcast has used its television stations, and you might even argue in a pretty smart way, as an additional lobbying wing for the corporation. Comcast has things like broadband networks that really make the difference in their bottom line every day. And if the government decides to regulate broadband, which they could do a lot more than they already do, they have a big problem. So why not use your television channels, your news channels, to lobby the government, to kiss the proverbial butts of the people in office? But with a new Trump administration in office, what's the point of having a Joy Reid along with all the other people who continue to be slobbish to the bureaucracy? It's just not worth it. But don't think this is just about ratings, because that's not their number one goal. You need to understand that. This program actually wants to get as many viewers as possible watching and listening and hopefully learning something, not only from me, but hopefully I get to learn something from you. That's the point. I'm not here to lobby anybody. I'm here to give you the news and hopefully learn about it from you. Simple as that. All right, getting back to CPAC, one of the most rousing addresses of the entire week came from border czar Tom Homan. Now, you may remember here on this program last week, I showed you a clip of Boston's police chief saying his cops won't help ICE find and deport dangerous, criminal, illegal migrants. Well, Homan saw that clip too, and here's what he had to say about it.
I read a story last night, the police commissioner of Boston. You said you doubled down on not helping the law enforcement officers of ICE. I'm coming to Boston, I'm bringing hell with me.
And again, I just want to remind everyone, especially those who are religious who talk about sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities, if you know your religious and Bible history, have an 0 for 3,000 year record. They're batting 0. If you truly are a criminal, going to a sanctuary city all the way back from the time of the Bible is not going to save you. And this time it won't save you from Tom Homan. All right, continuing now with some of the things federal workers just may be putting in their emails to Elon Musk and Doge. I just found out there is an agency called the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service. So maybe one of the emails they're getting this week will be telling Elon how it's taken almost 50 years, but our government workers have finally ended the dispute over whether light beer from Miller is less filling or tastes great. Thank God We lost a lot of cheesy 70s celebrities in that forever war. I love this whole thing. Send me emails, your pretend emails to Elon Musk. Let's have some fun with this. All right, coming up, there was a new hearing just recently in the Luigi Mangione murder case. He murdered that CEO, at least allegedly. I'll ask a former federal prosecutor what we can expect at that trial. And yeah.
Wow, Jay, some guys are sure in a hurry to get to the airport.
Guess he doesn't know about Hertz' new instant return. With Hertz, you don't have to rush to return your car. Because now Hertz gives you your receipt right at your car.
Yeah, I know it's hilarious and weird to see O.J. Simpson doing a Hertz commercial, but there's something even more embarrassing for Hertz happening right now that's kind of similar to the message of that commercial. We'll get to that in just a bit later in today's Moving America. Beautiful live shot of Miami, Florida there. I don't know, does that mean we just did Chicago? And there's got to be like 100-degree difference between these last two bump-ins that we've done. But that's a nice shot. And again, Miami Chamber of Commerce, I will tell you where to send the check for that video, because we did you a favor there. All right, let's take a look at where the markets will begin today here. We had a huge sell-off on Friday, 700 points lost in the Dow. Looks like we're going to have a little bit of a rebound. About half of that at the open will be clawed back. There's a big announcement coming later today from Apple, and I'm going to be talking about that with David Brody towards the end of the program here. That might be one of the reasons why you're seeing a little bit of a bump up, but it's, again, just about half, a little less than that of what we lost on Friday. So definitely some recession fears going on in the markets. Well, and speaking of that, this is disconcerting. Warren Buffett is hoarding cash and selling stocks. Now, that would seem to mean that he doesn't think we're going to have much of an economic boom in the next few months. You don't hoard cash when you have inflation unless you think we're going to have a recession soon and that inflation is going to turn into deflation. If you hoard cash during inflation, you might as well be putting it on the George Foreman grill or flushing it down the toilet. So listen, Warren Buffett isn't always right. Obviously, he's right a lot of the time. He's probably the most successful individual investor in American history. But that's a little bit concerning. But at the other hand, he's been wrong sometimes. So let's see how that goes. But he is clearly betting on a recession right now. You don't hoard cash under inflation unless you think a big recession is coming. All right. Well, it's not exactly a stock market story, but the business and the legal world are gearing up to watch the trial of Luigi Mangione very closely. Mangione, of course, is the defendant charged with that brazen shooting of the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson late last year on a sidewalk in Manhattan. And there was, you may have missed it, there was a pretrial hearing last week, but we still don't have a trial date. Joining me now to talk about that is former federal prosecutor Mitch Epner. Mitch, how far away do you think we are from, let's say, jury selection in this trial?
I don't think you can see there from here. I don't think we're anywhere close.
Okay, that's amazing. So let's talk about then the root. Let's put it this way. That means we've got some time to fix or at least disabuse people of a fear that they have. Because one of the things I've been hearing from a lot of people, from, I would say, people who are fearful of this on the right and people who are maybe even hopeful of this on the left, or at least I don't want to make it right and left. Let's talk about people who are critics of the health insurance industry. Let's put it that way. So critics and people who aren't as big critics, because there's a lot of worry that there are going to be activist jurors somehow infiltrating the jury pool and turning this into a commentary about economics and not about the rudimentary facts of this murder case. Now, let me do one thing to disabuse that. I'm going to let you do that from a much more expert position in just a second. I just saw a recent survey from my friend Scott Rasmussen and Neapolitan Research showing that only 10% of the public supports Luigi Mangione, believes that the shooting was, again, if he is guilty, believes that the shooting was justified. I mean, even if all 10% of those people in America somehow get to New York and get into that jury pool, that's not really going to tip the scales, is it?
Well, Jake, it only takes one juror to create a hung jury. So it's not about whether or not Luigi Mangione has a fan club out on the streets, because he does. I know people who were in the courtroom and they could hear the chanting 15 floors up. The question will be, how effective is the voir dire, the system, in order to screen out people with a preconception? And ordinarily, it is amazing to me how, on any case, no matter how notorious, how the system is able to find people who know absolutely nothing about the case.
I know. I mean, it might be a sad commentary, but then maybe we're happy about it. Look, Mitch, you used to be a federal prosecutor, and I'm sure that the official line from federal prosecutors and prosecutors of all kinds is that they don't do anything differently when there's a famous case. Obviously, I'm not talking about the things like having extra security in the courtroom and things like that. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about the way that they prepare the case, the way that they think about their opening and closing statements, the way they think about how they're going to, quote unquote, perform in the trial. But I got to think that this is really, we haven't had a high profile case like this in a major city in a long time, it seems to me. Tell me what some of these prosecutors who may be assigned to this and maybe get what they're thinking and how they may go about their preparations.
So the thing that's the most surprising to me is the state indictment, because they seem to have managed to have indicted Luigi Mangione for the one crime that he has a good defense on. There is no doubt in my mind, and I think in any reasonable person's mind, that he murdered the former CEO of United Healthcare with malice aforethought. He shot the guy in the back 3 times. The terrorism charge, though, given the very precise definition of terrorism under New York law, that is a very tough thing for the prosecutors to prove. And it has been surprising to me from the beginning that the prosecutors decided to bring that terrorism charge to turn murder 2 into a higher form. It's still not. It still makes no sense to me. If there's going to be a death penalty trial, the only place that can take place is in federal court. In state court, the most he can get is life imprisonment, and the terrorism charge is necessary in order to bring it up to potential life imprisonment. But they've turned what should be a very easy trial into a very hard trial.
That's a very interesting comment right there, and I'd love to go into more of that. Listen, Mitch, this case is obviously, as you said, it's going to be a while before a jury selection, but I want to continue to check in with you as we get closer to when we finally do get a trial date, because that's important. Mitch Epner, former federal prosecutor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, control room, let's get our motors running. right, moving America this morning. Now, I got to say, this Honda-Nissan breakup story is just getting really sad. The credit rating agency Moody's is now lowering Nissan's rating to junk status. This is now getting people more serious about predicting Nissan might actually go totally out of business. Remember, this is a response to Honda deciding not to buy Nissan, not to merge with them. But I say Nissan isn't worthless just because it got dumped by Honda in those talks. Don't give up, Nissan. You are beautiful just the way you are. Maybe change a couple of things. All right, file this one under somewhat misleading corporate announcements. GM says 2024 was finally the year that it made more money from electric car and truck sales than it spent on labor and materials. But that doesn't exactly mean they were profitable, right? Because there are other costs involved, like marketing. Speaking of marketing, they just used the all-electric Chevy Blazer as the pace car at the Daytona 500. I think that probably cost them a lot of money. So don't be fooled. All right. You know when you get those letters in the mail telling you that you could join a big lawsuit against a major company, and then you realize all you're going to get is like a $25 gift card? Well, just a couple of people suing Mazda for glitches in its CX series vehicle infotainment systems will be actually getting a couple $1,000s. That's nice to fix the system. But the law firm that filed those cases, just a few of them, $1.9 million. That's typical. I hate class action lawsuits. I just do. All right. Here's another lawsuit just waiting to happen. Hertz continues to get in hot water over glitches with its late rental car return policy. Now, more people are still coming forward with proof that the company charged them for late fees, even though their cars were returned on time. There were also cases where rental companies, including Hertz, not that long ago, were reporting some of their used cars stolen. And poor families going on vacation in Florida got pulled over and handcuffed. That, of course, the cars were not stolen. This is clearly, folks, listen, you don't have to be a genius. This is clearly a problem with Hertz's software system. Something's wrong with it. If they don't fix this, they are going to get sued for a lot of money. A $700 late fee, if the money was collected, can turn into maybe millions of dollars in damages if they're not careful. You better fix this, Hertz. All right, coming up. Was the IDF flyover over the Hezbollah leader's memorial service a sign of strength for Israel or a missed opportunity? And is Israel reaching a boiling point after another cruel spectacle at this weekend's latest hostage handover? American Sunrise Early Edition is coming right back. It's Monday, February 23rd. Here are some of today's top stories. You've got mail. Elon Musk and Doge tell federal workers to send them an email describing what they did on the job last week. Apparently, to some Democrats, this demand is tantamount to a human rights violation. Anytime, any place, the Israeli Air Force buzzes low over the massive memorial service in Beirut for Hezbollah terrorist monster Hassan Nasrallah. The Israelis were sending a message that was loud and clear. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's willing to step down in return for more Western support versus Russia, or even getting NATO membership. But is it really that much about him, or is it? And concerns for Pope Francis are growing as kidney failure is just the latest ailment to plague him, along with his lifelong respiratory issues. American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition, especially to those who are joining me on Getter and Rumble. And the chat on Getter is very, very good. We're talking about Bigfoot, so you don't want to miss it. But joining me now to talk about something a lot more serious and the latest from Israel and the latest from the Middle East region is Rabbi Yotav Eliach. He is the author of the definitive book on the subject, Judaism, Zionism, and the Land of Israel. You can pick that up on Amazon and some of the other websites that sell books. And Rabbi Eliach, let's start with this flyover at the Hassan Nasrallah Memorial Hate Fest, is what I'm calling it. And I need to ask this question because there's a debate about it in Israel, and I know that for a fact. Was this a sign of strength, or should Israel, should they maybe have attacked that service? What were people expecting here?
Well, obviously, there's a visceral response, and then there's a thought-out response. The visceral response is, yes, why don't you bomb the stadium and kill all the supporters? I don't think that would further Israel's agenda. But by flying over, there was a different message sent to different constituencies. I'll give you some of the messages. First of all, the most important constituency is Israel's own population. Remember, most of the people who live on the northern border have yet to return home. So there is a message to remind them, don't think that the IDF does not have the ability to control the skies of Lebanon, Syria, even when there's a funeral of Nasrallah. Number two, there's a message to the Lebanese government. Don't be intimidated. I know they have this funeral in the middle of the new Lebanon with a new president, former head of the Lebanese army, a new government that does not have Hezbollah ministers really. And the message was, you have Israeli coverage, while at the same time, you got to get your act together. The Lebanese army is not doing its job in Lebanon, in South Lebanon. So on one hand, we're here, Israel is saying, we can protect. On the other hand, you don't want us to have to be the policeman in Lebanon. Then there's a message to Syria. Syria now is a new country with, yes, a man who is a jihadist. On the other hand, he's trying to dance to two weddings at the same time. He has the jihadist past, but at the same time, he wants to be integrated into the world community. And this is kind of letting him know, do not be afraid of Hezbollah. Do not be afraid of Iran. You notice we mean you no harm right now, but we do mean your enemies harm. Then, of course, there's the message to Iran that even with all your leadership and all your power and all your bluster, at the end of the day, the Israeli Air Force will fly right over this event, right over this funeral, and there's not a thing you can do about it. So there were different constituencies and different messages.
Yeah, and I hope everyone listened to that very important Yiddish phrase Rabbi Eliach just said, dancing at two weddings at once. You should use it. Everyone use that one. You probably will find some opportunities to use that as either a really good joke or maybe even a little jab at someone. All right, now to Hamas. The civilized world is still reeling from the revelation that the Bebas boys, 5 and 2, were strangled to death. I mean, that is still obviously a very, very open wound for everyone in the civilized world, and I use that term advisedly. Now we see that Hamas emotionally tortured some of the other hostages on Saturday by making them watch others get released, but not them. Rabbi, how much longer can Israel restrain itself in the face of such cruelty?
I think I just want to add what else that they do. Every time they release hostages, and this was no different, first of all, they make it their business to do it on Saturday. They want to make sure that the Jewish state has to violate the Sabbath. So that in and of itself is something disgusting. It's something that's done on purpose. Number two, each one of the releases is a press conference. They have all these posters in Arabic, in English, and in Hebrew that have the same message. Hamas is the storm. We're coming. We're going to come and get you. We're going to destroy you. There was one message that said, Bibi, relax. You're not going to do anything to us. We're coming for you. And then there was also that really old-fashioned, there's a word in Arabic, dahmi. Dahmi is someone who's a second-class citizen that has to show deference, that one of the hostages had to kiss the terrorist on the head, if you watch that. All these things add up together. And Israel's first response was, there were about 600 prisoners from Hamas, a lot of them murderers, a lot of them serving life sentences, who were on buses, who were on their way to Judea, Samaria, and to Gaza. And at the last minute, the government said they had enough. They took them off the buses, put them back in their cells, and said, enough is enough. We're not going to have this humiliating game. So to answer your question, I think that was answer number one. Israel's not continuing. There's no more this quid pro quo that you get to violate the laws, get to humiliate Israel at every opportunity, and Israel's supposed to play the Western civilized state. That's not going to continue. Personally, I don't think there's going to be much more time for this exchange. I think in the not too distant future, Israel will, you can call it either relaunch the war or start a different type of war, except this one is going to be like America's war against Germany in April and May of 1945. Hamas will not exist when this particular war is over.
Well, let's hope so. Now to a horrific truth for those of us here in the United States. We, the American taxpayers, have been funding Hamas. We know this now, mostly thanks to the work of Elon Musk and Doge to uncover the programs just at the USAID office. There's probably other situations here. We find out now that there was a tremendous amount of funding going to Israel's enemies. I haven't found, by the way, one program yet in the USAID office that actually supported Israel. So for everyone who's America first, I'm with you here on this one. I always have been. Rabbi, how could this have happened?
Well, I think we know how it could happen. Unfortunately, everybody who was involved in talking about a deep state was laughed at by the media. The reason they were laughed at is the same reason a lot of things that was said by people on the right were laughed at, because the media works hand in hand to a great extent with, quote, the deep state. The deep state, just like in most of the Western world, leans heavily left and is very much against populists and populism. So using USAID, money, and it depends which numbers you want to read. I have an article from Front Page Magazine that talks about, in total, over 4+ years, $18 billion were funneled to Islamic states, Islamic movements, jihadist movements that are openly and clearly anti-American. So there's no surprise, because they never thought there'd be the type of audit that is being done now by Elon Musk. So unfortunately, I'm not surprised. I think most American taxpayers are horrified that this is what happened with their money. But I think people who've been following this carefully, they're not real surprises over here. There's been a lot of shady stuff going on, and they never, ever thought that anybody would take a close look and audit them. But that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where I almost have to laugh, because for a long time, people who are enemies of Israel in this country, and there's not many of them, thank God, this is a very, very pro-Israel country, but people who are enemies of Israel in this country, mostly from the political class, have made comments about how, well, we could cut off all funding. Well, go ahead, cut off all the funding, because Israel has come out clearly behind in the all funding game, because much more of the money, many factors higher, more money is going to Israel's enemies and terrorists than Israel itself. So go ahead, cut it off. All right, finally, Rabbi, Israel is forced to do major terror sweeps in the West Bank region, Judea and Samaria right now, with tanks in that area for the first time since 2002. What's the reason for this?
Well, I think the tanks are more symbolic. I think the IDF took a decision approximately a month ago that it's time to make sure that northern Samaria in particular does not become Gaza. Over the last time we spoke, I may have mentioned this, the amount of ammunition, the amount of terrorism and terrorist cells and organization and infrastructure that exists in Judea and Samaria, in particular in Samaria, is immense. And before you know it, there could be rockets launched from Samaria into Jewish towns, villages, not just on the coast, but even right next door to them. At the end of the day, my prediction or my guess is that Judea Samaria is going to be treated no different than Gaza. If you look at the public opinion polls, the population of Judea and Samaria under the Palestinian Authority is at least as anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-American as their cousins, brothers, whatever you want to call them, in Gaza. They too dream of annihilating the state of Israel. They too dream of wiping it off. They talk about it openly. It's unfortunately, and I would mention this to you and your listeners, you can go to a website called Palestine Media Watch. Palestine Media Watch. What they've been doing is for 30 years since Oslo was signed, they monitor what is said in Arabic on Palestinian Authority television, videos, textbooks, mosques, and their message is no different than that of Hamas. And they're funded by a lot of Western countries. Obviously, that's changing now that the Trump administration is there. So the attacks are just one more notch. The amount of Israeli forces in Judea and Samaria has grown to the point, do not be surprised if it's going to end up looking like Gaza in the not too distant future.
Thank you, sir. Rabbi Yotav Eliach, thank you so much for joining us and keeping us updated on all of that. Have a great week.
Thank you very much.
All right, coming up, David Brody and I will discuss a huge announcement from Apple. I teased it a little bit earlier. And no, it's not a new iPhone system update that pops up at the worst time. Stay with us. Slightly different angle on our live shot of Miami, Florida this morning. Apparently, the Chamber of Commerce is paying off the control room, and Miami outbid Chicago for a second shot. No, just kidding. But this is a nice shot, and good morning to everyone in Miami. Good morning to everyone else, especially those of you following along on Getter and Rumble, and the chat on Getter is pretty hot, so thank you so much for doing that. Hey, welcome back to American Sunrise. We're about to go to the big show with David Brody, and we have a big announcement to talk about. Apple announcing coming out this morning that they are going to invest $500 billion in America. The two things that really jumped out at me, David, were the AI plant, I guess you could call it, or AI development in Houston, and some kind of manufacturing academy or something in Detroit. These are great moves. And just quickly, what I want to say about this is like, look, we know that this has a lot to do with President Trump being elected. They want to be able to show that they're doing things here on American soil, and that's great. But you know what? I'm sorry, I have to point this out. Why should it take the election of Donald Trump for these big companies that owe America everything, that owe American culture, owe our education, they owe us everything? Why should it take them the election of President Trump to get them to do this kind of stuff?
Because they're basically all they care about is the almighty dollar. And that's all it is. And it's business. I remember there was someone that used to tell me, I won't name this person, but they said business is business. And that's the bottom line. Like, in other words, forget relationships, forget, love of country, all that type of stuff. No, it has to do with dollars and cents. And Jake, in this case, it makes sense. Look, we know the deal. Tim Cook didn't want to pay the tariffs. Just that simple. He didn't want to go, he didn't want to make that stuff in China as much as he wants to make it in America, not because he loves America, because he knows it's going to hurt their bottom line. Tim Cook, this is nothing new. I mean, Tim Cook and Trump have a good relationship, a solid relationship. But, Tim Cook was there at the White House 87 times. Look it up. It's on the internet. It must be true. No, but seriously, I did fact check this. 87 times that Tim Cook met with the Biden administration. 3 of those times, by the way, he met with President Biden specifically. So they've been lobbying for a very long time. And this is what they do. I mean, I guess I'm not shocked, Jake, to tell you the truth, that they wouldn't do this just kind of on their own nicety accord, if you will.
Yeah, I'm not playing the devil's advocate here, but I am bringing in another aspect of this. As much as we're upset at these American companies, let's not forget, however, that we can talk tariffs all we want, but if we don't do something to help American companies deal with unfair regulations in this country, the fact that labor does cost too much in this country, not because we're giving people this great quality of life, it's because of all the because the politicians are getting their hands in there. We've got to do something to also help them on the other end. The tariff is the stick. We got to do a carrot stuff too, don't we?
We do. You're absolutely right. And look, one of the things I like about, if I could just kind of deviate from that for a moment, one of the things I love about Trump, and it's really not played up as much. We always talk about the art of the deal, and he's the deal maker. It's true. So what does that really mean exactly? And we've seen it on the foreign stage and all of that. But from a business standpoint, I mean, he's got all these guys in his hip pocket. I mean, talk about a deep bench. I mean, Trump is just making phone calls, to these folks like Tim Cook and so many other of these CEOs, and just saying, look, what are you going to do for us? And, Biden didn't have that leverage. Other presidents haven't had that leverage. They've had it to a certain degree in terms of you're the president of the United States, you can make that call. But Trump has relationships with these people. He's a businessman. They respect him. And so it's a whole different world that Trump is dealing with. And that's why things happen, and they happen quickly as well, Jake.
Yeah, and I think it was Calvin Coolidge, who was a friend of mine too, David, who said the business of America is business. Don't be ashamed to say that we're 150 years old. It's really, we should be proud of our age. Thank you so much. Hey, listen, what's coming up real quick? You got like 20 seconds. What's coming up on the big show, American Sunrise?
Brian Glenn will be here. We'll also have a resident of Malibu talking about the fire devastation there and the firing of the LA fire chief by Karen Bass. So that'll be interesting.
Oh, excellent stuff. All right, the big show, American Sunrise with David Brody, Dr. G, T-Base. That's coming up at 8. You have to watch that. I'm Jake Novak. Thanks for starting your week with me here on American Sunrise Early Edition. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a great and safe and profitable day.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Gina. Welcome to CPAC 2025. I am here at the desk with my amazing co-host. I love it when we're together. David Brody, Terrence Bates. What an honor. So exciting.
Just to see you literally, I'm going to say it, in the flesh.
In the flesh.
Sometimes there's a little extra flesh. It's all right.
So it's been quite the morning for me. I forgot my makeup in the hotel room.
I knew that. And big news here at CPAC.
You knew I had extra makeup,
by the way.
And I knew David had extra makeup. So some of what you see here is David Brody on my face. I used his makeup today.
Wow, that went a whole other direction.
We
We are also joined now by Rev correspondent and host of Law and Border, which I am obsessed with your show and your work, as is America, honestly. Ben Bergquam.
It's light versus darkness. Everything we're battling is God versus the devil, and if you've got the light, it shines. And it doesn't matter how dark it is around you, your light still shines.
President Trump is now, he just said in the last 24 hours, he's come out in support of the House proposal.
The interesting thing about the liberal media is they just attack President Trump, attack President Trump, attack President Trump and the Republicans. They don't offer any alternatives. You see this on Ukraine. You see this on Doge. CNN this week, their general narrative has been, oh, everyone believes that government needs to be cut. The size of government has to change. But they don't offer any alternatives. They just say, well, the way that President Trump is doing it isn't okay.
Our members are in full support of what Elon Musk and President Trump are doing with Doge. They are eager to find out more waste, fraud, and abuse. They're saddened by it, but they're thrilled that at last an administration is taking seriously all the spending and all the waste that they've uncovered.
Listen, he's playing to the center of America, and all the things that we've been deprived, all the times we've been told to shut up, he's giving us our voice right now. And I think this will be an extraordinary healing moment in America. I think even I'm hearing from more Democrats, and I've heard from a long time, just saying, you know what, we got to just wise up and maybe we ought to pitch in a little bit. America's sort of back. We're getting back. I think it just feels like America's a little bit more normal the way it used to be a few years ago before all the silliness started.
So, hey, look, Steve Bannon. Oh, my gosh. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
I've seen you on television.
I saw Dr. Gina over here, so. she's a CPAC mainstay. It's not a CPAC unless Dr. Gina's here. Real America's Voice. What a fabulous setup, right? It's fantastic.
Fabulous. We got the big trucks and the whole. It's just beautiful here.
I can tell the lighting here is different than the war room. Dr. Gina's in the house, so it's got to be perfectly lit. Right? Is Carrie Lake coming? Where's Carrie Lake coming?
Ahead on American Sunrise, the Trump administration continues uncovering fraudulent and irresponsible government spending. As the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency ramps up its audits, how is America making sense of the billions of tax dollars that are being spent? Plus, President Trump drops a proverbial bomb on the Pentagon as the commander-in-chief announces top military leaders being dismissed. Coming up, who will be raising Cain as the country's new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff? And the economic toll from the deadly California wildfires is still being assessed, but now those who dropped the ball, causing billions of dollars in damage and leading to the loss of entire communities, are feeling the heat as well. Those stories and so much more right now as American Sunrise starts at the moment.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrence.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Gina. We are live with you from the Palm Beaches, fresh off the trail of CPAC. And I want to bring in David Brody. He is in Washington, D.C., and T. Bates in our Denver newsroom. Guys, you know, I was getting ready to get on my plane. I was at the airport, and a woman named Mindy comes up to me, and she said, "I wake up to you every day." And that was the theme at CPAC. That was the theme all over Washington, D.C., in the White House. So many people telling us they wake up to us. It was just so great to see everybody, and it was so great to be with the two of you. And major thanks, major kudos to Zen and our team for making an amazing CPAC. They really did.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we appreciate that for
time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
unfortunately,
go ahead,
David. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
No, go
I
ahead,
didn't
David.
really have much
Finish
to
your
say other than simply that, just to play off of what Gina said, we saw a lot of folks there right around the set and there at CPAC and taking lots of pictures with them, and they were just phenomenal. I'm just so glad Jengis and others, saw Jengis there and just so many others, Stacy, and just go on. So we're excited to have all of you and part of our RAD family for sure.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, though, now we are all back after a couple of days there at CPAC. And of course, the big news there at the conference was that President Trump spoke. He wrapped it all up. And here's just some of what he had to say, particularly as he was taking a victory lap. He and conservatives alike taking a victory lap. 47, using the opportunity to tout his record during the first months of his administration.
The fraudsters, liars, cheaters, globalists, and deep state bureaucrats are being sent packing. The illegal alien criminals are being sent home. We're draining the swamp and we're restoring government by the people, for the people. For years, Washington was controlled by a sinister group of radical left Marxists, warmongers, and corrupt special interests who drained our wealth, attacked our liberties, obliterated our borders, and sucked our country dry. Not any longer.
Sucking our country dry, enter Doge, right? Billionaire and Doge chairman Elon Musk says that he wants an email from every federal worker detailing what they accomplished last week. If they don't, it's going to be taken as a resignation, he says. He tweeted that out over the weekend. But now, guys, a handful of government department heads, including Kash Patel of the FBI, backing their employees and telling them to ignore that request. So, David and Dr. Gina, question for you. Is this the first sign of infighting when it comes to Elon Musk and Doge? Dr. Gina, why don't you start?
I mean, I just don't even want to pay attention to those who really want to sort of create drama. I don't care, frankly. As long as they're getting the jobs done that President Trump and the American people have charged them with doing, I think that needs to be our focus. All of the productivity, all of the great things that have come out of Doge already, and all people want to talk about is either Elon's personal life or who he's not getting along with. You know, look, I think Kash is going to do a great job. I think Elon's going to do a great job. I can absolutely assure you that if either of them are falling off in any arena, President Trump will be the one that handles it, not the media, not the talking heads out there like myself who aren't there. We're not privy. Again, as I like to say on this show all the time, those who talk don't know, and those who know don't talk, Terrence, or David.
Fair enough.
Well, look,
go ahead, David.
We got to get to our guests. I've got a lot to say on this. I take a little bit of a different viewpoint than Gina on this. What's going on? I mean, what's the process here? I mean, we shouldn't have, and this is not made-up media stuff, okay? This is Kash Patel literally sending an email to folks at the FBI saying, in essence, don't listen to Elon Musk. and the Doge team. I mean, look, we don't want that. No one wants that. We love the chainsaw stuff. Okay, we got it, right? Let's do it. But let's get the process. Who's running everything? This is what I've been saying since this first started. I'm very concerned about what the chain of command is here, because the last thing we need here is to have any confusion and, more importantly, any sort of fiefdom wars going on here. So let's get the process figured out, and let's know exactly what's going on before we get competing emails between Elon Musk and Kash Patel. We don't need it. This is not the time for it. And I'm pretty ticked off about it, and they need to figure this out. And if they have it figured out, well, then communicate that with the American people.
Who are you ticked off
at? All right, guys, we're going to be talking a lot more about that. Dr. Gina, sorry, we do have to move on. We're going to talk a lot more about that, and I promise when we come back to it, I will give you first dibs at this.
No, I just wanted to ask David a question. So we'll just go right on ahead, Terrence.
All right, because I do want to get you to your Bible verse here momentarily, Dr. Gina, but I want to set it up with the fact that the Roman Catholic world praying for Pope Francis, who of course remains in the hospital this morning, recovering from a bout with early kidney failure, potentially also pneumonia. Now, this latest health scare is leading to talk about who might replace the 88-year-old pontiff. Again, that's just one of the headlines that people are talking about this morning. But Dr. Gina, I think that is a perfect segue to your Bible verse today, please.
Today's Bible verse is from Ephesians 3:16 through 19, and it says that he would grant you, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with might through his Spirit in the inner man, that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and established in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the width and length and depth and height, and to know the love of Christ, which surpasses all understanding, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. I used that particular one at my father-in-law's funeral. It always makes me think of him. Meanwhile, President Trump has chosen Dan Bongino, a former U.S. Secret Service agent, as FBI deputy director. Trump praised Bongino on Truth Social, calling him a man of incredible love and passion for country. Let's welcome in Congressman Bob Onder from Missouri's 3rd Congressional District. Congressman, I tell you what, my question for you, I'm supposed to go to the FBI question, but my question for you, actually, because I know you and I know your background, and I'm a little more interested in this particular topic, is Catholics got to be a little conflicted over this Pope and this illness. As you look at, no one wants to speak ill of someone, especially going through what he's going through, and America's prayers are certainly with the Pope, but that doesn't mean we agree with his politics and what he's done to not only the Catholic Church, but to really, I want to say, the American culture. I know your heart on this. I know your wife and your family. I know you must be somewhat conflicted on this Pope. How do you answer when people ask you, what do you think, what will happen if there is a new Pope? Who would that be? Who is on the bench for Pope? Because this Pope has been destructive to the things that you and many pro-life Catholics in this country agree on.
Yeah, Gina, our prayers, of course, are with the Holy Father, as with anyone who is about to meet their Maker. I do believe, just as a medical doctor, I believe we're hearing bilateral pneumonia, we're hearing respiratory trouble. There was rumor of sepsis, and then it was denied, and now they're talking about an organ failure, kidney failure. I think Pope Francis is not long for this world. But Gina, I have to agree with you. Although the Pope, as leader of the Roman Catholic Church, successor of Peter, is supposed to be our number one person who is extolling the faith and morals and dogma. And unfortunately, too many times it seemed that the Pope almost scandalously cared about what the woke political class thought about him in the church, rather than preaching the gospel in season and out of season. So I don't really have much insight into who will be the next Pope. I would love to see Cardinal Burke. Yes. I would love to see Cardinal Sarah, but we will see.
Congressman, I'd like to talk a bit about the budget, since you and your colleagues are going to get back to work hammering out a budget, hopefully get it passed in short order before the deadline passes. But as I guess subsection A to that question, I'm also curious if you'll have one eye on Elon Musk and Doge as you guys work through your budget in terms of concerns, if you will, about him potentially overstepping his bounds, how he's handling the audits of government agencies. How are you looking at all of this? And I'd like you to juxtapose the two. I know I'm putting a lot on your plate, but I think they to some degree are connected.
Yeah. Well, as far as concerns about Elon Musk, I have zero concerns about Doge and Elon Musk. I am a proud member of the House Republican Doge caucus. Look, I think the way to look at Elon Musk, he is a consultant. We think of consultants like Bain or McKinsey coming into companies that are, quite frankly, dysfunctional. Maybe the management knows what they're doing, or maybe they don't. But a fresh set of eyes to look at what's going on. And in the case of the federal government, just enormous amounts of waste, fraud, and abuse. Already in just less than a month, Doge has discovered at least 55 to 100 billion dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. And of course, we've heard Donald Trump read the list of the 130-year-olds, 150-year-olds, 300-year-olds who are collecting Social Security checks. We know about the $59 million of FEMA funds used to house illegal aliens in luxury hotels, the $2 billion that was essentially laundered to Stacey Abrams' political operations. Look, I am a fan of what Doge is doing, and I think it will be part of the conversation going forward. But at the same time, we in the House of Representatives, the senators, we need to come up with a plan that puts us on a sustainable fiscal path, and that means cutting the programs, even apart from the Doge savings.
Congressman Bob Onder, I wish we had more time. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks. Great to be with you. Thank you.
Coming up, we check out the hottest headlines from the RAV newsroom with T. Bates, and later, Joy Reid. Your show is canceled. Gone and good riddance as MSNBC struggles to revamp its network. This story and much more when American Sunrise is back in minutes.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
Kansas City, Missouri on a Monday in late February. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Coming up, President Macron is at the White House. There he is. Did he bring baguettes? Because Trump is bringing a sledgehammer this morning. We will discuss that with Brian Glenn in a moment because T. Bates is standing by with the man of the hour from the North Lawn, and it's all sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
President Trump will be back on the world stage today as he and French President Emmanuel Macron will take part in a G7 leader summit called Together at the White House. The French leader is the latest head of a U.S. allied nation to visit 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. In the meantime, down the street at the U.S. Capitol, the House will get back to work on approving a budget plan to fund President Trump's agenda. Real America's Voice White House correspondent Brian Glenn joining us from the People's House this morning with the very latest. Brian, as always, good to see you. So let's talk about President Macron there at the White House. You just told me moments ago that he has arrived there. Overhanging all of this, though, is the situation in Ukraine. One has to imagine that even if on the sidelines of the talks, that will be part of the conversation, particularly in light of Ukrainian President Zelensky saying over the weekend that he would be willing to step aside, give up his leadership if it meant peace for Ukraine. But he also offered the caveat that Ukraine would have to have NATO membership, which is something the Trump administration has already come out vehemently against. So this is going to be an interesting meeting. I say all of that to say that, Brian.
Yeah. Well, good morning, Terrence, and that is an excellent point. And of course, they will later hold a joint press conference at around 2 o'clock here local time. And I would imagine that that very topic will come up. So much to talk about with this president as so many things develop around the world. But mainly it's going to focus on Ukraine and the involvement and the exit strategy and how do we end this war. And President Trump loves to say this would have never started if he would have been president, but this is allowed to escalate like it is. The Macron just and his team arrived here just moments ago. They have a phone call, like you said, with that G7 call, and then later today, about 12 o'clock, I think President Trump officially greets Macron here behind me, and then they go into lunch at about 12:35, and then later have that 2 o'clock press conference. But it's interesting that you look at what's going on right now, Terrence, and so many different opinions on how we should be involved and how this war should end and who should pay what, and it's with everything, and it's really. You look at the leadership and just the short amount of time that we have been here, that President Trump has been in office. Look at the amount of world leaders we've had come through this driveway behind me, and it just shows the leadership and the willingness to get things done. And it's obviously today is another example of the Trump administration's moving right ahead.
Brian, as this meeting is getting ready to happen and President Trump meeting with those G7 leaders along with Emmanuel Macron, it appears from the outside looking in that there is some daylight between the United States and its European allies as it relates to Ukraine. Do you expect that daylight to be highlighted today, or will it be dimmed a little bit?
I think it could be highlighted. Obviously, I do. I mean, when you think about this for a second, we're $36 trillion in debt, and I don't know if the American people want another cent funded to Ukraine, and of course we don't have the ability to do that, and we're in this whole when you look at Doge and all the other things that we're tackling right now. Now it's not the time to keep a conveyor belt of money going to fund this war. I think we can obviously see some support on backing all of this to just put it to an end. And if it's widely unpopular to keep this war funded, and I think President Trump is headed in the right direction. We'll just see where Macron sits in all of this.
All right, Brian Glenn reporting for us from the White House this morning. It's going to be an interesting day for you, my friend. I'll check back in with you a little bit later on.
Yes, sir.
All right. Coming up here on American Sunrise, retaliation after Israel expects the return of one hostage's body, but unfortunately gets another instead. The latest on Israel's response as Hamas hands over a few and Israel frees dozens. Next, though, the activities that doctors suggest you avoid in order to stay out of the emergency room. You have to stay tuned for that. First, though, a quick check of this day in history. It was on this date in 1965 that the Beatles started filming "Help" in the Bahamas. The group filmed without a day off for 14 days in the Bahamas. It's been widely regarded as a parody of the contemporary James Bond films. Much more American Sunrise coming your way after this break.
I'm so insecure. Now I find I've changed my mind. Open up the door.
Atlanta, Georgia on a Monday here in February. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. All right, we now head to the Middle East. Israel says it will delay the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Good for them. Citing concerns over the recent exchanges related to hostage handovers, which, of course, they characterize as degrading and cynical because, wait for it, they were. Most of those hostages were paraded in front of a crowd by masked, armed Hamas terrorists going to hell when they die. I ad-libbed that, but it's true. Let's welcome in Gol Kalev, a writer for the Jerusalem Post and chairman of Judaism 3.0 think tank. Gol, thanks for being here. You're also the author, of course, of The Assault on Judaism. The existential threat is coming from the West. So welcome. So Gol, you have the sick parading of these Israeli hostages. You also had Hamas giving Israel the wrong body of one of the dead hostages, Shari Bibas. Now we understand that Israeli tanks are rolling into the West Bank, which hasn't happened in over 20 years. So what's going to happen here regarding the next phase of the so-called ceasefire agreement and beyond? Good morning to you.
Good morning. As you said, what we're seeing here is sheer evil. And this is images that the world hasn't seen. You know, in my generation, we think of evil, we look at things from the Holocaust. But I think there is a difference. The difference is during the Holocaust, the Nazis were trying to hide their attempt to murder Jews. Here, those Hamas savages are proud of that. And, the reason the Nazis were trying to hide it is because they were afraid of the world's reaction. And here we see a very peculiarly, the world is kind of divided. And never before has there been such a clear demarcation between you can either bless Israel or you can curse Israel. And we have so many people who choose to curse us, who call us the pariah, who put sanctions on us, who do all those that kind of stuff. But at the same time, we have a lot of people like you guys who choose to bless us, and we're very grateful for that. And as we spoke in the past, Israelis on the left and on the right, of all sorts of Israelis, are extremely grateful to President Trump for his blessings.
Gal, the current ceasefire is just that. It is a ceasefire. It is a far cry from a peace deal. The reality is, or I'm asking you actually, what the reality is on the ground there in Israel in terms of an appetite for a lasting peace. Can that happen with Hamas still in place, or does Hamas have to be eradicated in order to even begin a conversation about peace?
Oh, absolutely. Not just Hamas needs to be eradicated, but in my view, there needs to be three different things. There needs to be Hamas eradicated. We cannot do peace as long as we have old frameworks in place like the two-state solution. That's why in one of my previous Jerusalem Post articles, I urged President Trump to officially pronounce the two-state solution dead, because it's been a hurdle to peace. The Secretary Blinken said the two-state solution must stay in the two-state solution we trust. You got to get that out of the way, and you got to get European involvement out. You have all those, what Elon Musk and others are doing by defunding, Hamas from all their perks. It doesn't help when Europeans are continuing giving money to the conflict industry and giving a lot of monies to fuel and to incite Palestinians against Israel. So not only Hamas of course needs to be eradicated, but we need to move away from, we need to get an etch-a-sketch and, forget about all the legacy frameworks and start anew. And what President Trump is doing is exactly that. The Gaza plan is exactly the kind of thinking that would lead us to peace, as opposed to the previous template that just perpetuated war and conflict.
Gal, in a historic first, Houthi forces launched surface-to-air missiles at U.S. fighter jets over Yemen. This unprecedented attack marks a pretty big escalation, most people calling it significant, prompting concerns about the safety of international military operations in the region. What is your prediction as to the turnout on this?
Absolutely. I think, Gina, what we're seeing is the mirror image of peace through strength. We're seeing war through weakness, because the Houthis and all of those go back to Iran. But why are they raising their head, and why are they doing all of this? Because in their narrative, October 7th paid off. They won. Because look at October 7th. Hamas attacks us, kills hundreds of Israelis, rapes, does all the savagery, and they survive. Now they're back in Gaza. In northern Gaza, they abuse us. They create this psychological warfare. And not only that, they get to have hundreds of murderers being released from jails. So this war through weakness, the weakness that we had in the last 4 years, created this war. And now other people around the world are looking at this and says, well, this October 7th type strategies pay off. We should also kidnap people, murder people, and get, hundreds of people out of jails, murderers out of jails. And that has consequences, because we already in Israel a few days ago had, miraculously was saved from a very large scale terrorist attacks in Tel Aviv, and the buses and the light rail. So it's exactly as you said. This is a new level that the Iran's proxies are reaching, and they're doing that because they sense weakness on the other side, and that is why it's so imperative that when it's all said and done, that this is just temporarily, just as I think David, you said, this is a temporary ceasefire. It is very important that we will be able to resume the fighting for our survival, and that's when this all is said and done, it will be clear to the world that October 7th didn't pay. The Trump plan to basically change Gaza completely addresses that and will deter would-be terrorists in Europe, in the United States, and elsewhere.
Gol, let me ask you a little bit about the Judaism 3.0 effort here, the think tank, the book that you've written. Look, this is fascinating to me. You talk about this transformation to Zionism, and let me be very clear. I am a proud Zionist, and this idea that Zionism is all of a sudden controversial. Hello, God gave the land to the Jews, to the Israelis. I mean, look, that's the bottom line. That's all that Zionism is. I know it got co-opted into this, like, some sort of political movement that people think is, like, nefarious. No, it's not. I'm curious to get your reaction in less than a minute or so.
Absolutely. I mean, people ask me why are you saying that Judaism transformed to Zionism? Zionism is a dirty word, but so was Judaism. Judaism used to be a dirty word for years. And, I'm not saying I'm not saying this is the way it should be. I'm just saying this is the way it is. People connect to the Jewish state through Zionism, to the national aspect of Judaism, whether it's in the positive or in the negative. You even had a Reform synagogue in Chicago last year, and these are unaffiliated Jews that might be coming to synagogue once a year or so. All of a sudden, they decided to pass a resolution that one of their core values is anti-Zionism. And so people come to synagogue all of a sudden. This is the relevant aspect of Judaism from them, in this case, in opposition. I have a lot of friends, Jewish friends in New York, who are, right after they don't go to synagogue, don't do anything, but they write a Facebook post, as a Jew, I'm embarrassed about Israel. So once again, you pull to the negative. But in reality, there is a lot of crisp light that is emanating from Zion. Israel is what we call the Tikkun Olam state, meaning we're repairing the world through Israel, addressing famine, doing all those wonderful things. So Judaism is transformed. Simple story. We're in Israel and Judea. We left, we came back, and there is a lot of light that can be beamed through Zion.
Gal Kalev, I really appreciate it. Yeah, I've lived that Zionism type story here in America I grew up Jewish and Reformed Jews in my household, very liberal, as you know, and then, of course, the Orthodox family members on the complete opposite side, pro-Zionism. Thank you, Gal. Really appreciate you being here.
Thanks,
you.
Gal. Good to see you.
Thanks, Gal. Safe travels.
Good to see you. Thank you.
All right, coming up, the cost of the LA wildfires. Recovery efforts seem to have no end. There'll be a California woman here who witnessed the destructive fires. She'll tell us the toll it has taken on her community. And a Pope update as he fights for his life. Back in a moment here on American Sunrise.
Welcome back to the American Sunrise. Hope you guys are in the chat. I just got in the chat, hadn't been in since CPAC. And I'll tell you what, it was nice to say good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining us. Time now for today's health news, sponsored by The Wellness Company. And under the microscope today, staying out of the ER. Sounds so easy, but doctors are revealing a long list of common activities that people do that lands them in the ER. An emergency medicine physician says if you like wearing Crocs, be careful. The footwear may be comfortable, comfy, can't talk this morning, but it doesn't provide any traction or ankle support, which means Crocs can fly right off your feet and fly you right into the emergency room. Another common activity, petting strangers' dogs. It's so hard not to pet the cute puppy, but doctors say The risk of bites in an ER visit should be enough to let children be aware and cautious of an unknown pup. Just remember, always ask the owner and then follow proper procedure where you put your hand out first, let the dog sniff, never with your palm up, right? Always with your palm down. All right, then a big no-no from ER docs, people who hold things like avocados and bagels in the palm of their hands while slicing them. Yeah, that's another one. Another ER physician says cooking-related knife injuries are very, very common. So much so that around 350,000 people head to the hospitals every year for these type of injuries. I don't know about you guys, but would you head to the hospital? I wouldn't. Personally, a little super glue gets me going, but that's another story. It's a new day in America and a new administration in Washington, D.C. I do cut my hands all the time, especially when I'm slicing tomatoes for some reason. That's just, I don't know. Anyway, they're too slippery or something. Onions, too, a little slippery. A lot of excitement in D.C., a lot of optimism about the future, but a lot of work to do, too. Our healthcare system is broken, and it's not going to fix itself. The forces responsible for breaking it aren't going to just fade away. The challenges won't disappear overnight. So now more than ever, you want to be prepared. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. Their doctors are medical professionals. You can trust them. Their line of prescription med kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you healthy, whether it's the medical emergency kit, the contagion kit, the first aid kit, or the travel kit. These kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of the meds in the kit. From flu to strep to COVID to bird flu, a trip to the beach, a trip overseas, the Wellness Company has a prescription kit designed to keep you safe. Make America healthy again starts at home. Do your part, protect the health of your family. Go to twc.health/RAV. That's twc.health/RAV. Use the promo code RAV to save 10%. David Brody, do you cut yourself a lot cooking? My kids make fun of me because they're like, I will either burn or cut myself or both pretty much every time I venture in the kitchen. And I do love the kitchen.
Yes, I do, actually. We're going fast. We're moving. Let's go. We have things to do. So, yes, I do, for sure. All right. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass has fired veteran Los Angeles Fire Chief Kristen Crowley. The mayor says she has since learned that the fire chief could have deployed 1,000 more firefighters in the early days of the fire. Also, apparently, Crowley refused to prepare a critical report on what happened during the fires. Crowley has been critical of Bass and the city's budget cuts, calling it underprepared for the growing threat. Of course, the wildfires started, as we all know, at the beginning of the year, destroying thousands of homes, killing dozens of people, and leaving a terrible toll on affected residents. So let's welcome in one of those residents, Elena Cardone, a Malibu resident who's also an entrepreneur, speaker, author. Elena, thanks for being here. Curious what you make of Mayor Bass firing the LA fire chief. They're turning on each other for sure.
Well, clearly she is not fit for the job. I mean, the lady wasn't even in town when the disaster was occurring, even though she knew it was going to be there. I have so many opinions about this. I don't even know where to begin. First, I will begin by saying this. I want to send my gratitude out to all of the firemen and women out there who bravely battle these fires and do what they do on a daily basis to protect the communities. They certainly don't deserve to be caught in the crosshairs of all of this. So getting that out of the way now, I think that Mayor Bass is trying to kick the can down the road, trying to use Chief Crowley as a scapegoat to mask her inefficiencies to run a city. I don't think she is fit for the job. And now she's firing the chief who in December raised the alarm, sounding the bell, saying, hey, we are understaffed. There's budget cuts. We don't have the resources. There's going to be poor coordination if a disaster does occur. And this is a woman who should be looked at saying, okay, how can we try to protect lives and listen to her experience. She's qualified for the position and to implement that going forward. But instead, it sends a message that any sort of person who is going to raise an alarm is in a threat of their position for being in some sort of defiance. So Karen Bass, put money into, we know this, to put money into DEI programs and funding illegal immigrants with housing and lawyers and medical, whatever they needed, and put non-legal citizens before her own public safety and the citizens of her own town. So that alone is just qualification for her to either immediately resign or have her position withdrawn from her by the citizens of Los Angeles.
Yeah, Elena, you're speaking, you're a professional businesswoman. You're speaking in a professional businesswoman tone because you're that kind of pro. But your daughter's bedroom burned, and you are a personal friend of mine. Our families are friends. Our children are friends. I can't imagine seeing my children's bedroom burned and knowing the politics, Elena, behind this, that the water was withheld basically for 5 dang fish, Elena. And it was playing politics with. These are photographs actually from your home, by the way. These videos right now are actually from your home.
That's my home right there. They were trying to save it.
Exactly. And I want people to know this is very personal to you. This isn't you just talking about some topic you read about in the newspaper. Talk to the politicians who didn't bring the water, not only didn't send the firefighters, but didn't bring the water, used their environmental radicalism against your family and endangered your friends, your family, and your property.
Well, it's an absolute outrage that these politicians decide what is okay for the citizens there. And we elect these officials because we trust that they're going to take care of the citizens and public safety. And instead, they go and do these ridiculous social programs that are not for the betterment of all. And it's just an absolute outrage. And the thing, I consider myself blessed because my home actually is standing. It is severely damaged, but it is the only one in a long row that survived. My neighbors are down to the ground, all the way 18 homes from mine to the ground. Mine was the only one in a line of 18 that the firemen were able and women were able to secure, if that's what you want to call it. And it's it's that the people trust that the government officials are going to do what is best for everyone. And really the message is, are the people and the citizens of Los Angeles and California ready? Is enough enough? I mean, I didn't know beforehand that the reservoirs were empty. I didn't think about checking these sort of activities to bring forth to say, hey, shouldn't somebody be alarmed? I just trusted it.
Right. Well, now hopefully a lot of folks in California have woken up to the way these politicians have been really using and abusing them for a radical environmentalist agenda that we're talking about.
I hope the Californians are ready for new leadership and ready to get it cleaned up.
Exactly. Elena Cardone, love to your family. We are so glad you are safe by and large with just a little damage. Thank you so much for being here. Coming up, a back and forth you have to hear to believe. President Donald Trump and Maine's governor in a spat on live TV because the governor refuses to comply with Donald Trump's executive order just wanting to keep men out of women's sports. I can't believe women actually defend this. Also later, is there more undiscovered JFK assassination? Are there more files? The FBI digs deeper into records related to the president's death. We'll be right back. The fun starts again in 2. Yeah, reading a headline, RFK Jr.'s first big move at HHS is to restore the policy that there are only two genders based on biological sex called men and women. Crazy thoughts. Anyway, now it is time to stay awake, not woke, brought to us by the 1775 Coffee Company. We want to thank the crew at 1775 for joining our RAV family. We appreciate the sponsorship, and we are loving the brew and all the swag. You're drinking coffee every day, Ravagers, so probably drinking some right now. So have you ever, though, stopped to ask, with all of your politics and everything you know about health and everything, where does your coffee come from? And better than that, where does your money go? In 2024, Starbucks' top political contribution went to Kamala Harris. Big brands hate your values, and that's why we drink coffee like 1775 coffee that agree with our values right here on American Sunrise, and why you should too. 1775 coffee is roasted in Florida, the red state of Florida, by patriots for patriots, sourced from small farms in Bolivia where they really need our help, so you're doing a good thing too. This doesn't come from massive industrial factories, so none of the bad stuff. This comes from small farms, small batches, fresh roasts every single month, and that means you will definitely taste and feel the difference. And only get fresh beans in your cup, by the way. Try their dark or medium roast for bold flavor and smooth finish and zero acidity. I love zero acidity. You need an extra boost in the morning? Well, their mushroom coffee blend, the best tasting one out there, by the way, made to fuel your mind, wake you up, and get your brain going. And if you're a K-cup drinker, don't worry, they have real coffee inside, not the freeze-dried stuff the others use. So go to 1775coffee.com/RAV. Use code RAV for 10% off your order. We are this obsessed with this coffee over here at Real America's Voice. You will be too. And so get it today. 1775coffee.com/RAV to support and show you have the best tasting cup of coffee in your life. Use the code RAV for your 10% off. All right. And now that we are well caffeinated, it is time to stay awake, not woke, right, Terrence?
Absolutely, Dr. Gina. Appreciate it. We want to talk about President Trump, who has launched a federal investigation that could drastically reduce education funding in the state of Maine. The action comes after a dispute with the state's Democratic Governor Janet Mills regarding transgender athletes in schools. The probe seeks to examine policies that Trump alleges discriminate against female athletes. The face-off between the federal government and the small New England state is intensifying the ongoing national debate over transgender rights in sports. In fact, here's President Trump and Governor Mills and their spirited confrontation over the issue.
I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it, because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply, because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor, because I don't think you'll be in elected politics. Every state has a responsibility to comply with Title IX. They have an obligation, a legal obligation, and we'll be enforcing aggressively, and we're going to be protecting our citizens. We're going to protect. So just to end this administration.
That's what you call a clapback right there. The investigation will assess whether state and local policies comply with Title IX federal protections for female athletes. Under an executive order signed by President Trump on February 5th, that order prohibits the participation of trans women in girls' sports. So, guys, there's a lot to take in here. Who wants to go first? I'm sure you guys are both chomping at the bit for this one.
Well, I'll just say it's a smackdown. And President Trump knows his stuff on this, and I think I think he's absolutely right, everything he said. And I think that she is not long for the world of politics, and time will prove that out, David.
When $250 million doesn't come into the state of Maine, she'll change her tune. Money talks, T. Bates.
And BS walks. That's the New York part of that conversation. Thank you. Coming up, a check on Pope Francis's health as the 88-year-old is in the hospital battling pneumonia and other health complications. That coming up here on American Sunrise.
God bless the USA.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Time now for our moment of faith, brought to us by Lee Greenwood and the God Bless the USA Bible. In focus today, health reports on Pope Francis show signs of early kidney failure as the 88-year-old pontiff remains in critical condition. Vatican officials have not confirmed the severity of his illness, but say he is receiving continuous medical care. Concerns over his health have sparked, of course, prayers and speculation about the future leadership of the Catholic Church. All right, well, let's welcome in Dr. Tim Clinton, president of the American Association of Christian Counselors. And that, of course, is the largest and most diverse Christian counseling association in the world, FYI. Dr. Tim Clinton. Tim, good to see you, sir. So the Pope, clearly frail. He spent 10 nights in a hospital. I'm curious to get your thoughts. I want to be somewhat sensitive to it, obviously, from just a health perspective. But this Pope has been controversial, and that's putting it nicely.
Yeah, good morning, David, and really glad to be with you. I was reflecting on the Pope and the current condition he's in, and my mind went to Ecclesiastes 3:11, David, where it says, God has set eternity in our hearts. I just think on the personal side here for a moment, when you are facing death, and the world is certainly watching and looking in on Rome right now, but my dad went through a similar situation, and I'll never forget being bedside by him, and eventually went sepsis on us. And that was a moment, David, that really caught my attention. Reminded me of his words to me, Tim, make sure you go and walk with God. And for me, that was embracing John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but everlasting life. And that's where I anchor myself, David, my life in Christ. And I'm sure the world is pressing in right now, wondering where all this is going. And you're right, there's a lot of controversy around it.
Yeah, and you don't want to have that conversation necessarily right now. I mean, he's still alive. It does, though, bring up questions that we all have about what the future could hold for the Catholic Church. But I'm just kind of curious to maybe get your overall thoughts of where the Catholic Church is today, and what's happened here in less than a minute. Good luck.
Well, David, I know there's changes in the air. I mean, you go back to what happened on January 20th. We're talking about a shift not only in power, but in worldview. And so I think as we look at what's happening right now with the Pope and the situation there and the succession plan that's going to happen, whatever's going to take place there, I think people are praying earnestly, crying out to God, saying, hey, God, where are we going? Certainly, we know this. Faith is central to who we are and what's happening around the world. And I think people are beyond their knees asking God to hear from heaven and say, God, would you see us in this moment? Would you lead us, go before us, and help us to stay close to him and his heart?
Dr. Tim Clinton, great to have you on. Thanks for being here. And I know you're doing a lot with the Faith Office there in D.C. or in the White House. We'll have you talk about that next time. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Delighted. Thank you, David.
All right, we're back with the second hour of American Sunrise in 2 minutes. Stick around.
Introducing the limited edition God Bless the USA Bible, inspired by Lee Greenwood's hit song and the most recognized patriotic anthem in America, God Bless the USA. The God Bless the USA large print leather-bound King James Bible also contains America's founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance, along with a handwritten chorus to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA. With its large print and slim design, this Bible invites you to explore God's Word anywhere, anytime. The God Bless the USA Bible makes the perfect gift and cherished family heirloom keepsake to pass on to future generations. Designed for an easy reading experience in the trusted King James Version translation, this large print Bible is perfect to take to church, Bible study, work, and for traveling. Order yours today at GodBlessTheUSABible.com.
Coming up on this second hour of American Sunrise, some of President Trump's sweeping executive orders have been challenged in court. So, where do things stand this morning? We'll tell you. Plus, Attorney General Pam Bondi says she's reviewing the JFK files. So how long will her review take, and just how soon could we see some answers? And MSNBC has announced a huge shakeup to its primetime lineup. We'll tell you what it is and who's in and who's out. All of this as the second hour of American Sunrise starts right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrence.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Welcome back to the second hour of American Sunrise, everybody. I'm David Brody, coming to you from the deep state. Let's bring in Dr. G in West Palm Beach, T. Bates in our Denver newsroom. Happy Monday to both of you. So Emmanuel Macron is at the White House. He better have brought fresh baguettes, Gina, because he's going to need to curry some favor with President Trump.
Yeah, I don't know. Every time I hear his name, I think of those little French cookies that I love so much.
Yes, I do too.
The pink ones and the green ones and the almond flavored ones are my favorite. Literally no comparison to President Trump. The substance is not there. He's a beta boy. Mm-hmm. He's a product of the dead generation of politics, the one that is on its way out, dead and dying. It's going on its way out. Nobody wants that anymore. For a minute, people got really confused and thought, oh, a bunch of beta boys running around. That'll help women. I don't know what they thought. And all it's done is degrade our society and impair our culture. And thank God, help is on the way, Terrence.
I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. While President Trump is flushing the swamp, Macron is probably looking for a bidet right now. I'll leave it there.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
I normally hate toilet humor. That was good, Terrence. I have to give it to you.
I may get in trouble for it, but
I did not have my bidet on my bingo card this morning. So
that's definitely the word of the day, though.
Only T. Bates would come up with something like that. Okay, let's get to it, guys. President Trump has tapped Elon Musk to advise him on reining in the federal bureaucracy. Musk then ordered federal employees to lay out their roles in an email. But the FBI is reportedly not participating. We're now seeing reports that FBI Director Kash Patel is telling his employees to ignore that email from Musk and his team. Patel also saying the FBI is handling its own review process. Other agencies like the State Department and DOJ also reportedly doing the very same thing. And staying with the FBI, President Trump has named podcast host and former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino as the deputy director of the FBI. Posting on Truth Social 45 and 47, writing in part, great news for law enforcement and American justice. Dan Bongino, a man of incredible love and passion for our country, has just been named the next deputy director of the FBI. Here's Bongino's take on everyone who participated in the Mar-a-Lago raid.
How many freaking times are we going to let the FBI interfere in an election? I mean, this is supposed to be a constitutional republic. I'm not crazy, right? Like, this is supposed to be a representative democracy. Banana Republic. We're beyond a banana republic. We're into like tin pot dictator third world stuff. This is embarrassing. At least Pravda didn't pretend to be anything but state apparatchiks. The FBI, and listen, I've been with you for a while. I work with a lot of decent guys. I'm done with the rank and file stuff too. I'm done with it. If you took part in this, anyone who took part in this, anyone, I don't care who you are, an analyst or an upper level manager, the next president who comes in office, they should schedule F as many people as they can in the federal government and fire every single person involved in this. Everyone. The receptionist in the FBI office who took a call on this should be fired.
All right, for more, let's bring in RAV Chief White House correspondent Brian Glenn. Brian, I see you shaking your head there, so I suspect you agree with Dan Bongino, but I think the overarching issue here is that there are big changes at the FBI. Kash Patel also heading up the ATF under President Trump's orders, so there's a lot happening at that agency.
Man. You know, when you take a look at the three individuals, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino, and you think about the task at hand as far as really getting rid of all the corruption within the several departments in this country, I can't think of three people that could better do that, Terrence. That was such a pleasant surprise to get that announcement. I always thought Dan Bongino would have something to do with the Secret Service in some type of form there. But what a great pick he is, serving with Kash as well.
Just out of curiosity, I'd love to get your take, or maybe even the take from the White House, in terms of Kash Patel telling his agents, no, don't write that letter to Kash Patel. We're going to handle it in-house, and some of the other government agencies doing the same.
Yeah, I can respect that decision, actually. I've got a kind of a personal story I'll share with you just for a second. This morning, I was coming down the elevator to walk out of my building to come here, and two other gentlemen got into the same elevator, and I said, you know, just looking at my phone, say, hey, we're all going to work. And two of them said, well, once we get to work, we don't know what email we're going to open up and whether or not we'll be allowed to come back tomorrow. And then my Uber driver on the way to the White House today said the same thing. He's never seen so many people with anxiety getting in his vehicle, going to work, that they don't know if they're going to get that email today that not only is telling them that they no longer are needed, but they have to respond with maybe the top things that they plan on doing today. But I will say this, anybody who's worked in corporate America for any amount of time, this is what corporate America does. It's called accountability. It's say, hey, this is your job. Tell us what you're going to do today. Tell us what you accomplished today, and tell us what you're going to do tomorrow. That's accountability, and I think it's actually a good thing, but I do think to a certain degree, Kash Patel is right. They're going to maybe handle that internally and let them deal with it. But I do like the overall narrative of accountability within our government employees.
And Brian, to your point of accountability, let's get it right back there to the White House, where French President Emmanuel Macron is right now. He's going to be meeting with President Trump. Ultimately, there will be a larger meeting with G7 leaders. These meetings are also going to be to hold these other world leaders to account, at least from President Trump's perspective, to hold them accountable for funding in NATO, to hold them accountable for the situation in Ukraine and how to move forward with that. These meetings are also about accountability, and President Trump saying, look, just because you run your own country, I still have expectations of you.
Yeah. And you know what? He's a leader, Terrence, and that's what leaders do. He brings people together. And I said this in the last hour. You look at the amount of people that have come to visit President Trump in the last 30 days. It's remarkable. We didn't see that under President Biden. We did not see this conveyor belt of leaders coming to the White House. And I was just received word a few moments ago that we will have a camera, and I will be in the Oval Office when President Trump meets with Macron and the foreign press there. So make sure you tune in for that. That should be very interesting. As I can imagine, a lot of those questions, one coming from me, will talk specifically about Macron's stance on Ukraine and how we can afford to spend another penny of this $36 trillion in debt that we are right now.
Brian, just ask Mr. Macron about Lady Marmalade and Itchy Gitchy Ya Ya Yay, what that means, please, for me. Brian Glenn reporting for us at the White House this morning. I couldn't resist, Brian. I'm sorry. You're trying to be serious and look at me with the jokes. I couldn't resist. Brian Glenn, appreciate you, my friend. Appreciate your reporting. All right, let's get you over to David Brody now. David, I'm going to put myself in timeout. I'm sorry. I'm a little punch drunk this morning, I guess.
Well, that and the bidet, you're running it up here, T. I appreciate it. All right. All right. We're also tracking several of President Trump's executive orders that have been challenged in court. And I got to tell you, our collective brains here a little bit fried trying to keep up with all the lawsuits. But let's give it a shot. The Trump administration has had some victories so far, like the government employee buyout program and Doge being allowed to access Department of Education files, at least temporarily. There have also been some setbacks with judges so far. They've ruled against the administration accessing Treasury Department files and pausing foreign aid spending. and also trying to end birthright citizenship. So where do things go from here, and should I take an Alka-Seltzer? For more, let's bring in former Trump attorney Christina Bobb, who's with us. Christina, great to have you back on the show. Where do these appeals stand, and do you see a lot of them getting to the Supreme Court? It seems like that's what this is all about, to say, you know what, Supreme Court, it's time to get going and decide some of this stuff.
Yeah, I do think a few of them will end up at the Supreme Court. I'm not sure that all of them will. I certainly think the birthright citizenship one will get up there because it's pretty unique on its face. It's really asking the court to interpret the first sentence of the 14th Amendment, which establishes birthright citizenship for those who are born in the country and subject to our jurisdiction. So that's a totally different bailiwick. A lot of these other cases really focus on what authority the president has. Does he have authority to access Treasury Department records? Does he have authority to change DEI programs and defund certain programs? So I think if I were on the Supreme Court, I would be watching these cases as they make their way through the court and kind of cherry pick the ones that they want, because the facts are a little bit different, but the substance on the law in a lot of ways kind of is the same thing as what authority does the president have. And so I expect that the one-off cases like birthright citizenship by themselves will make it up to the Supreme Court. And then kind of a group of cases that really are just challenging the president's authority, I suspect the Supreme Court will rule on one of them that will decide all of them at the same time.
To your point about the birthright citizenship question, I mean, these are some key constitutional questions. These are questions that in our lifetime, I don't think anyone has ever questioned or challenged, which is revolutionary to some degree. I mean, this is big stuff, and it's heady stuff.
Yeah, it really is. To my knowledge, I don't know that it's ever been challenged to this degree. And certainly, if you want to amend the Constitution, you can go through the constitutional amendment process, which is very difficult and lengthy and probably not likely to succeed at this point in time. The other process is what President Trump is doing, is going up to the Supreme Court to ask for an interpretation of that sentence. Did the founding fathers, did the drafters of the 14th Amendment, did they envision a scenario where anybody could illegally enter our country, give birth, and suddenly their child is a citizen who can then bring them into the country? I don't know that our founding fathers envisioned that, and I think that's the drafters of the 14th Amendment, I don't know that they envisioned that. But that's the battle. That is the question, is what does the 14th Amendment really mean?
Christina, New York City is suing the Trump administration over taking $80 million back in money to fight illegal immigration. The city says the Trump administration took the money back and it could hinder other efforts across the city. They also claim that the government didn't follow necessary procedures in taking the money back. What do you make of this?
I think they're desperate. I think they created a terrible situation for themselves, whether it was Mayor Adams or the Biden administration enforcing this on to New York. I think they're in a really bad spot. And everyone now is questioning President Trump's authority to make these changes. And I know that his team is very prepared for these issues. And I suspect that President Trump is able to claw this money back, but we'll see. It'll have to play out in court. Who knows how it's going to rule, especially in New York, and is this going to be another one that goes through the appeals process? Probably, but I think people are nervous because Democrats had these programs where they were basically slush funding millions and millions, sometimes billions of dollars to these Democrat programs, and that's drying up, and they're nervous about it.
Christina Bobb, great to have you. Great to see you. And thanks for being a patriot on the front lines.
Thanks,
we really
Christina.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Coming up, President Trump has been on a frantic pace getting the top agenda items done. Have we ever seen a pace like this exactly? But first, the president continues to drain the swamp, and now he's targeting the Defense Department. We're going to have the latest moves next as American Sunrise continues on a Monday. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Great to have you with us this morning. Time now, you know what we're going to do. We're going to drain the swamp. And this morning, President Trump is draining the Pentagon. He announced over the weekend that he's fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Air Force General C.Q. Brown Jr., along with 5 other top defense officials. Huge move. Democrats, of course, slammed it, saying it was reckless, and added that Trump just wants to put yes men in key positions. That's all about loyalty, and that it would hurt military readiness. Of course, we do know why this happened. President Trump is trying to rid the government of DEI, and now we've got the former Joint Chiefs of Staffs who had promoted it all the time. There are clips upon clips of him promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. Here he is in 2020 talking about, quote, hiring for diversity. Have a look.
All of us have to seek out those diverse candidates to bring them in. That's what we're trying to do in the Air Force. Is you almost got to purposely manage some of this. You just can't let it. If you do it by happenstance, we won't change. We got to be actually involved as leaders from all backgrounds to ensure we have it. It really makes for a better organization. I mean, I get so much out of I purposely build my office, my front office, and my team with diverse. And I hire for diversity.
All right, let's bring in Gina and Terrence. I hire for diversity. I mean, this kind of goes along with the DEI executive order, Terrence, and it also goes along with what Pete Hegseth has been talking about.
Right, and that's why C.Q. Brown, General C.Q. Brown, is on his way out. It's those sorts of statements that obviously are counter to what President Trump is looking for. And he's an example of someone who's accomplished and obviously has risen to the highest ranks, but his perspective on life and the way he managed, if you will, counters where President Trump wants to go. And so he's not going to be part of that process. It's definitely not because he's not qualified, but he has gone out on a limb and he's going somewhere different. He's going left, whereas President Trump wants to go right.
You know, I have this weird, unique background on this, that I was in school for my master's degrees and PhD during the time where some of this was being conceptualized, right, where they were coming up with these ideas. And I was undercover. No one knew I was a conservative. No one knew I was a Christian. Everyone thought I was a feminist scholar because that's what you had to be to actually be passed in much of academia. And so I went along with it, and I just listened a lot. And I heard them say things like, if we could get the policy where the number one value was diversity. And I heard them come up with the concept of equity, which was very different from equality, right? Equity means that you actually force, right? Even if it doesn't work, even if there's no merit involved, you force the diversity. I remember them coming up with these concepts and saying this would give us more power and would weaken the existing power structure and the traditions of the American institution. So that was a goal from day one. This is Marxist ideology 101. And it is in and of itself, as Terrence and we have discussed on the show many times, it is in and of itself the most racist concept you can possibly come up with, because all you are doing is judging someone based on race. You are saying someone is only judged based on either race or sexual preference or gender, right? Things they can't control. That in of itself is fascist and racist and Marxist.
David, if I can just add, and I'll kind of piggyback on what Dr. Gina said, it should be all about merit. I think we all agree with that. I think anybody that's reasonable agrees that hiring opportunity should be based on merit, but we have to ensure that merit always prevails. And unfortunately, historically, that hasn't always happened, which has gotten us to the place where we are now.
That's a good point. Dan Kane, by the way, retired general, 3-star general Dan Kane is Trump's pick. 3-star, not 4-star. There's going to be controversy about that because typically it is a 4-star general, so we'll discuss that maybe in another segment. All right, coming up on American Sunrise, RAV correspondent Ben Bertwam. He, of course, is the host of Law and Border. He had an exclusive interview with border czar Tom Homan. We're going to have the interview for you. But first, Elon Musk demanding federal workers detail what they accomplished in one work week or be let go. Have we seen anything like this before? We're going to take a look at that next historically on American Sunrise.
Welcome back. Here's a look at while in Tennessee. I believe that's in the eastern part of the states, and I only say that because there are mountains there. And typically in Tennessee, I think most of the mountains are in central and eastern Tennessee. What a great shot to start your morning. We're getting ready for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It's going to ring here in about 7 minutes. I can tell you that pre-market trading on this Monday morning looking pretty positive. All of the indices are in the green right now. The Dow is up, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ are up as well. Gold is also in the green right now. Silver, not so much. Crude oil also in the green. We'll, of course, keep you updated on the situation throughout the morning. But now, let's get you over to my good friend David Birdie. David, good morning.
Thank you, Terrence, and you are my good friend, too. All right, President Trump has wasted no time using the executive order Sharpie pen, as T. Bates likes to say, and it's true, in an effort to make wholesale changes to the damage that the Biden regime has done to America over the last 4 years. Presidential historian Craig Shirley says we have never really seen a pace like this. I mean, Shirley tells Just the News that Trump is moving much faster than Presidents Reagan and FDR had to. Of course, FDR for sure, and Reagan to a certain degree, didn't have to deal with the border crisis. Reagan did to a degree, but FDR didn't. And Trump, of course, has to deal with the border crisis, so that adds to all of these executive orders. But for more, let's bring in the man himself, Craig Shirley, with us, the resident historian. Craig, you know, this frantic pace, it's really wild. Democrats say Trump is acting like a king with all these unprecedented executive orders. What say you?
Well, that's kind of typical what the Democrats would say. They're really frustrated and flummoxed by the pace of the velocity of the Trump agenda. Is that, yes, it does surpass FDR with his New Deal and Reagan. I mean, they both moved very, very quickly. Don't get me wrong. It's just that Trump came in prepared to move a lot quicker, and that's really got the Democrats flummoxed because, you know, it's hard to hit a moving target. And the Democrats right now are reduced to defending corrupt government and abortion. And that's not a winning message to the American voter. And, you know, by all accounts, Trump has the support of the American people. And many presidents, including Lincoln and Reagan, talked about to get things done in Washington, to get things done in America, you had to have the support of the American people. It sounds obvious, but it really is true. You really need the support of the people, of the populace, to get things done. Trump has their support.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Craig, also the Trump administration obviously wasting no time reshaping the federal workforce. You've got Elon Musk doing the dirty work and his team. So he sent this tweet saying that all federal workers are going to be getting an email requesting they explain what they do each week. And if they fail to respond, that will be regarded as a resignation. Have we seen other presidents try to reshape the federal government and workforce like this, or is this unprecedented?
Well, no, it's unprecedented. Virtually all presidents have built up the bureaucracy. The one president most recently who tried to ask for accountability of federal workers was, ironically, Jimmy Carter. When he came into office, he sent questionnaires to all the federal employees and wanted them to fill them out, you know, what their work duties and the time they showed up, things like that. And of course, federal bureaucrats, being what they are, they completely ignored him. But Carter at least tried to, you know, he ran for office in '76 saying he was going to reorganize Washington. Instead of the 200 agencies at the time, he was going to shrink it down to 20 agencies. And it was appealing. You know, he got to Gerald Ford's right on this issue. Gerald Ford came off as a defender of the bureaucracy, a defender of the establishment, and Carter was the change agent. And hence Carter won.
Let me ask you real quick. We've got about a minute left or so, maybe a little over that. We're hearing talk from critics that this has turned into an imperial presidency. I'm curious to get your take on that. I mean, we have seen an expansive outreach as it relates to what the chief executive and his powers could be that seems to be going to the courts. I mean, we saw George W. Bush do some of this as it relates to the war on terror. We saw Obama do this with the financial crisis. They took those executive actions. How do you see that in comparison to what's happening here in about a minute or less?
You know, David, if you go back through history, during crises, all presidents exercised expanded powers. Lincoln certainly did during the Civil War, FDR did during the Great Depression.
Reagan did during the Cold War, is that presidential powers expand as crises come up and contract as crises abate. So I'm not surprised that Trump would be charged with that. I think he's actually, it's interesting is that he is undertaking the same federalism that Reagan tried to did to a certain extent, but Reagan didn't have the support of Congress, whereas Trump does. And so he's sending power and authority back to the states, which is the definition, power sharing between the federal government and the state government. That's the definition of federalism. So, as far as I'm concerned, more power to him.
Well, it's going to be something we're going to watch for sure. Craig, Shirley, great to have you with us here on the show. As always, thank you.
Dave. Have a good week.
All right. You too. Time for T. Bates in Denver for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
The opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange is set to ring here in less than a minute. I can tell you the pre-market trading is looking pretty positive. So far, so good to start this week off. Everything is in the green, the Dow, the S&P 500, as well as the NASDAQ. You see there on your screen the applause is underway, which means we aren't far off from the opening bell and the markets officially opening up. That bell is going to ring here in short order, and then we'll get a view of how the markets are looking to start this week of trading. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The markets are now officially open, and just like that, not much of a change. The Dow remaining in the green, as is the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, the tech-heavy NASDAQ. Gold and crude oil also in the positive right now. The only blemish on the screen is silver, which is in the red, and that very well may rebound by the end of the trading day as well. Well, here's a question for you. Have you seen the news from the economists forecasting a depression, not a recession? Depression by the year 2030. We're in a perfect storm as Social Security and Medicare hit a breaking point with the largest generation hitting retirement. A smaller workforce means a smaller tax base. Pair that with our growing national debt and rising cost of living, and we've got a big problem. So, what are you doing now to protect your family for the future? Well, gold is a safe haven in the hard economic times like what we're dealing with now, and the Birch Gold Group makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. The Birch Gold Group will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. And it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. Protect your future today by texting the word America to the number 989898 and getting your free information kit on gold and a copy of The Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with the foreword written by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation here, only information. The Birch Gold Group has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings, and you can count on them as well. Text the word America to the number 989898 today. Coming up here on American Sunrise, Attorney General Pam Bondi is reportedly reviewing the JFK files. So when could we see some answers? We'll assess next here on American Sunrise.
All right, welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. Thank you for joining us this morning. We invite you to join the conversation on Getter and Rumble. It is time to take the political pulse of America. The Beat today, RAB correspondent and the host of Law and Border, Ben Berquam, recently had an exclusive interview with President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan. Here's part of that interview.
Well, 32 days in, we got illegal immigration on the border, illegal entries down 95%, which is a game changer, unprecedented. We have just under 22,000 illegal aliens arrested in the interior, vast majority being criminal aliens. We got the number of gotaways down from an average of 1,800 a day under Joe Biden to 48 the other last 24 hours. So we're making a lot of progress. Borders very secure. We got more work to do, and we're going to keep doing that. I'm not going to be happy till there's zero gotaways. I'm not going to be happy till every gang member, every illegal alien criminal, every public safety threat and national security threat that are not supposed to be here until they're all gone. That's the day I rest.
How do we combat the activists that are out there training these people how to game the system, especially if we're just using administrative warrants? Is there, not getting into tactics or anything that's secret, but is there more that we should expect as far as getting larger numbers? Because we're talking 15 million, we're talking big numbers.
We're increasing the targeting. We put together a great group to increase the targeting. We're increasing the number of teams. And as far as administrative warrants, watch to see what happens in the next few weeks.
So that's it. That's the breaking news. Watch to see what happens. What about the leaks inside?
Leaks inside, look, we're dealing with. We already identified one leak, and that's under investigation. We'll wait to see how the investigation pans out. We're investigating one more. So look, 99.9% of these agents on the street are doing the right thing. I mean, I know a lot of people are pointing the fingers at the FBI. If there's a leak in the FBI, shame on that person, but these FBI agents are out shoulder to shoulder with us. They're wearing a gun in their hip, putting a Kevlar vest on, arresting the worst of the worst. So God bless the FBI. God bless the U.S. Marshal Service, DEA. All these groups out there are working with us. So we're going to keep doing it.
And Kash Patel.
Rockstar. So how about the change? Great. Look, you got Kash Patel. You got Pam Bondi, right? The president put together one hell of a cabinet. So, for those sanctuary cities, you want to keep playing your games, you want to keep being a sanctuary for criminals, you can deal with Pam Bondi. The FBI, for those groups that Trump just designated terrorist organization, you can deal with me and Kash Patel. So look, it's all hands on deck. President made that clear. All the government is going to make this country safe again.
Thank you, sir. Anything else to the American people? How can they help you?
Look, God bless President Trump. We got the greatest president of my lifetime back in the White House. As far as what the public can do, look, we're looking for 300,000 missing children. We just started that effort. I'm asking every American to be deputized. You're an ICE agent. If you see, look, every parent in the country has an innate ability to know when something's not right with a child. I think all parents have that. If you see something not right with a child, see that child in the workplace that shouldn't be there. If you see that child in a situation, there's something not right. Make a phone call. Because if one phone call out of 1,000 saves a child, then you're doing the right thing. So I'm deputizing every American citizen now to help us find these missing kids. Some of them are going to be in sex trafficking. Some are going to be in forced labor, but we got to save these kids. President Trump made that commitment. I make that commitment. We're going to do everything to find every one of them.
All right, now over to the JFK files, where Attorney General Pam Bondi says she is currently reviewing them. Bondi says she has not seen everything yet, but this is all part of the review to get the files out. The Attorney General also said, by the way, casually, Jeffrey Epstein client list is sitting on her desk. Oh my goodness, the way these people do. I love it so much. President Trump signed an executive order to release the files of the assassinations on JFK, RFK Sr., and MLK. For more, let's bring in author, including several books on the CIA and works on the JFK assassination, and journalist Jefferson Morley. Jefferson, you have to love the trolling of her saying, by the way, I mean, she wasn't even addressing the issue, but she just, by the way, those files are sitting on my desk because There are a lot of people out there who know their name is sitting on her desk and wondering when they're going to be hearing about this. This is something that the American people really are entitled to know. And this is transparency at its finest, is it not?
No, not really. We haven't seen any JFK files yet. Put aside the Epstein files.
Okay.
We haven't seen any JFK files yet. We haven't seen President Trump's plan.
But I'm saying if they show them that, I mean, they're saying they will. I don't know how they're going to say they will and then not do it.
You know what? These records should have been made public 8 years ago. So when the CIA has blown the deadline by 8 years, there's no reason to sit around and give them more excuses for kicking the can down the road. These documents are in College Park, Maryland, right near here. Any administration official with a security clearance can get access to them tomorrow, and they could be released within the week. So now we have a kind of delaying game going on, and we have to watch that carefully. I'm not talking about the Epstein files. I know the politicians are hungry to get on to that one because it's very sexy. My focus, what I've been saying for many years, is all of the JFK files should be released. And until that happens, we're going to say the president doesn't get a passing grade. Now, his rhetoric is great, and that's an important factor in getting this done. But we know something, and we know it, I know it from suing the CIA and being in court with them for many years. They're not going to change their behavior because President Trump put something on a piece of paper, okay? So they're going to be fighting to prevent release of these records. And all we're saying is we don't have a theory. We just want to see all the records soon. The politicians can go have their hearing and posture and all of that. President Kennedy's assassination deserves public attention, and I hope Congresswoman Luna's hearings are serious on the assassination. But there's really no tolerance for continuing delays around these records. We should be very clear about that.
The one thing that I heard you say is all of the records, all of them. How confident are you that that will ever happen, that there are records out there that we even know of? And I say that because the FBI recently said that it just found more than 2,400 additional documents related to the JFK assassination, and which raises more questions, at least for me. You just found this many additional records? Really?
Yeah, no, that goes to show, that was the one piece of welcome news in the past month was that the FBI found records and made them available for release. And hopefully we will have those records soon. Now, the CIA needs to do the same thing. These are records that are known to exist, are known to be in the possession of the CIA, and are known to concern the surveillance of Lee Harvey Oswald before the assassination. So I'm hoping Congresswoman Luna's task force can put attention on this and get the government to get its act together and release these records. There is no excuse for delay.
Jefferson, do you expect any bombshells if we ever get everything? And why is it taking forever? What's the bottom line on why it's taking forever?
Right. What is the why? I don't get that either.
The CIA simply doesn't want to talk about what it knew about Lee Harvey Oswald before the assassination. They started lying about Oswald on the day President Kennedy was killed and downplaying what they knew about him. Now we know, thanks to records released in the past 5 years and not very well covered by left-wing or right-wing media, is the fact that the CIA had an 180-page file on Oswald when President Kennedy left for Texas that day. Okay, 180 pages. That's what they had on him. And then they turned around and said, oh, he was just a lone nut. What are they hiding? That's not a credible story. He wasn't a lone nut. He was a known quantity. And the CIA does not want to explain that. So that's what we need to get at. We need to skip the theories. We need full disclosure because that's where the heart of the story is. People say, it's so old. Why, what's taking so long? I understand that. Almost all of the people involved in this are dead. Although not all, and there are living witnesses who can tell us important facts about JFK's assassination, and the Congress could call them. That would be, that would be very helpful. But, is somebody going to do that? Is that going to happen? Hopefully it will, but it hasn't happened yet.
Get to the heart, if you will, for us, Jefferson, of why you say that the JFK files are more important, really, than the Epstein file, because it seems to me that the Epstein files, I don't like it just because it's sexy. I could care less about that. I like it because I feel like it's going to expose the worst hypocrites and corruption in our current day body politic.
Yes, people like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump who took flights on Jeffrey Epstein's plane need to be held to account. I'm not diminishing the importance of that story. It's an important story, especially in its intelligence dimensions. But I'm saying, Representative Luna said JFK files were the first priority, and I think that's appropriate. These are the records that have been collected. This is the story that's been investigated. We know where the records are. Why doesn't the CIA want to talk about this? Because it's embarrassing to them, and even though there's not a lot of people alive who are responsible, it could hurt the CIA's budget. It could hurt their reputation. It could embarrass them. They might be called up on Capitol Hill to explain, what is this 180-page file you had on Oswald? How did that happen? They don't want to do that, so they want to bury the whole thing and put it under the rug. That's what's going on now. And, we got to bear down and focus. That's why I say Epstein files are important. But in terms of the American people, in terms of American history, it's appropriate that Congresswoman Luna and President Trump said this is the top priority. This is the first thing that was mentioned, the JFK files.
Jefferson Morley, thank you for your time.
Thanks, you.
Jefferson.
The IRS is the largest collection agency in the world, and with April 15th fast approaching, it's more aggressive than ever. In 2025, enforcement has ramped up, and if you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, waiting is not an option. The longer you do, the worse it gets. Ignoring your tax troubles is the worst thing you can do. April 15th marks another tax year that has passed you by. Getting ahead of this now is a smart move, but you should never contact the IRS alone. Instead, let the experts at Tax Network USA handle it for you. Why? Because not all tax resolution companies are the same. Tax Network USA has a preferred direct line to the IRS, meaning they know exactly which agents to deal with and which to avoid. With proven strategies to settle tax problems in your favor, whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, Tax Network USA's attorneys and negotiators have already resolved over $1 billion in tax debt. Talk with one of their strategists today. It's free. Stop the threatening letters, stop looking over your shoulder, and protect yourself from property seizures and bank levies. Don't let the IRS control your future. Call 1-800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAB. April 15th, just around the corner. Act now before the IRS acts first. Coming up, Joy Reid has been canceled by MSNBC. What else is that network planning to do? We're going to take a look next on American Sundays.
Let's spill some tea.
Let's spill some tea.
Yep.
It's sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTeaCompany.com. Use promo code Gina RAV for 10% off. Artillery Tea, all natural. You know the deal. Whole leaf. We all know the tea bag's chemical free, and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company, family and veteran owned and operated. A portion of your purchases go to help veteran and first responder charities. ArtilleryTeaCo.com, promo code RAV for 10% off. Hey, before we get going on this next segment, which will be a quick one, Gina, let's talk for a moment about what our guest Jefferson Morley just said about Donald Trump traveling to Epstein Island. That is incorrect.
Incorrect.
Incorrect. Now, we would have said something right there at that time, but of course, facts matter, and I wanted to double check that. And indeed, PolitiFact, who, by the way, is run by the Poynter Institute, they're considered nonpartisan. This is not right-wing stuff or left-wing stuff. It's kind of just in the middle, relative. If anything, it leans left. And it said this, that is a false charge when saying that he went to Epstein Island. Actually, Trump flew on Epstein's plane, I have it right here, 7 times, at least 7 times, on his private plane in the 1990s. None of them went to Epstein Island.
Exactly.
That is important.
Very
and Gina,
important.
for him to put Trump and Clinton in the same sentence and then, have the implication that it was Epstein Island, or actually say that it was Epstein Island, that's wrong. And we would have called him out in real time, but it's important. We want to check our facts sheet.
Well, we went straight to break. David and I started talking. We started doing the research immediately, as did our producers. And, because if there were late breaking news or something that we weren't aware of, I don't want to interrupt the guests to correct them on something so misleading as that statement was, to, as you said, to put Donald Trump and Bill Clinton in the same sentence, especially regarding Epstein Island, is a complete. It was just extremely misleading, David. And so we wanted to correct that record in no uncertain terms. Donald Trump did travel on his jet, as a lot of people travel on a lot of people's jets, but never one time to Epstein Island, not at least in anything that David and I and our producers could find during the time on the commercial break. So we wanted to set that record straight for this audience. It's very important that we don't sort of allude things that are absolutely provably untrue.
And to be clear, that's not from a right-wing website. It's from PolitiFact, which is what is considered down the middle. They're probably more left, if anything, which makes the case even clearer. All right. So Gina, let's spill some tea in the cup today. MSNBC has canceled Joy Reid's evening show. Ho-ho! The network says a panel-hosted show will be taking its place at 7 o'clock every weeknight. Also, Alex Wagner will not be staying in the 9 p.m. slot Tuesday through Friday. I know you're devastated. Rachel Maddow had been hosting that slot just on Mondays, but then was going to go back to 5 days a week because President Trump's doing his 100 days, and Rachel wanted more airtime. The network also expected to announce more changes in the coming days. All right, for more, let's bring in the host of Media Exposed, Adam Weiss. Adam, you shocked at this, or was this a long time coming?
Look, David, you and Gina wanted to correct something, right? And this is a network and an anchor, Joy Reid, for decades. She's just doing the most anti-conservative, and I hate to say it, anti-white rhetoric across the country that we've ever seen. And it's amazing that she could hold the job for 10 years. Even on the day of the election, she said, we're going to wake up and it's be a dawn of fascism, dictatorship, something similar to Hitler's regime, something similar to South Africa under the white regime. So please don't vote this way. She called Kamala Harris the most flawless campaign we've ever witnessed. Brilliant campaign. Taylor Swift was with a beehive. So her idea of a great campaign is all because celebrities came out for her. There's a lot of mental health crisis in this country, David, we know about, and it comes from this media ecosystem. For a decade, if you tell people that are on the spectrum over and over again that the right, conservatives, Trump, that whole orbit are evil, dictators, then you see what we saw during its first administration. People yelling chasing Sarah Huckabee out of restaurants, people following conservatives into airports. So I'm glad she's gone. It's about time. And Rebecca Cutler, who runs MSNBC, is calling a meeting last night because some of the staff is outraged. All right, you're outraged? Here's the door, just like Doge did. If you don't like it, there's the door, like these days, and go find a new job.
Do you think more cuts are coming? I got 20 seconds or less. More MSNBC cuts are coming. Got to be, right?
There has to be. I mean, you can't run a network and you have a president and a country shifting culturally, and people don't want this stuff Or we want a civil society. We want a government that's slimmer. You can't be calling half the country such terrible names. You could be liberal, David. We all grew up in a system that it was fine to have as liberals, and we got along with them, and it's good to have a debate, but not this kind of liberalism and that kind of echo chamber.
The Trump effect, Joy Reid gone, Jim Acosta gone, and it just continues to go on and on. Adam Weiss, great to have you, sir. Appreciate it. Tight on time today. All right, back in a moment.
To American Sunrise. And big thank you, by the way, to everyone who came out to CPAC. That was so much fun. Of course, thanks first and foremost to Zen for making it happen, to my co-hosts who are amazing. There is our team. Look at those rock stars. We also had Jengus. We had Beach Lover. We had Mindy that I met. We had so many. You guys can name others. But what a great, great time. And the way that they set up, we had games all around us. We were in the middle of the action. It was just a fun time. So I want to be sure and thank everyone. Right, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So much hard work. So much hard work. Good for them.
Yeah.
I needed my beauty sleep, but they did the work.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, exactly. I want to say, and yeah, look at this set. It was just amazing. I want to add one thing to the commentary about Donald Trump and Epstein, as we were talking about it, David, just before. And that is, not only did Donald Trump not take any trips to Epstein Island on Epstein's jet, counter, of course, to what that guest said. But also, Donald Trump, my understanding is that he, I believe, removed Epstein from Mar-a-Lago for impropriety. So, you know, that's something to be said as well. I think it's important to keep the record straight. And Donald Trump is not claiming himself to be a perfectly moral, upstanding. But there's a big difference between living the life of a bachelor like he did for as long as he did, and doing some of the things that he did, and then and when we're talking about children, there's just a big difference. It's a big line we draw in our American culture, but it's a very important one as well. And that's where Bill Clinton and others were maybe not so pure. Anyway, we have a great week coming up, you guys. Lots of great guests coming up on the show. Great show today. You guys, Terrence, did you get your chicken and mambo? This is